You know, life has a way of surprising us. We've all had unexpected moments that really end up impacting who we are. I'm Chavi Bruk, and let me tell you, I've had my fair share of these moments. On Totally Unexpected, I don't just interview my guests. We have long, meaningful conversations to explore the twists and the turns that change their lives. You won't only be hearing from the guest, you'll be hearing from me and my thoughts and reflections, just as I would be doing in real life. These aren't traditional interviews, they're conversations about struggle, growth, and the moments that make us human. We all just want to feel connected, at least I do. And if we end up feeling a little less alone, that would make me so happy. Welcome back to Totally Unexpected. What a week. I'm recording this the day after Purim, and it was a great one. I hope yours was too. Before I introduce our guest, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what's happening and what has happened in Totally Unexpected land. We've had lots of content happening over at Substack. So if you haven't been a part of that, it's definitely worth it. There's been a lot of great articles or essays, if you will. I wrote one about my feelings on psychedelics and Ozempic and, that kind of stuff. And that was fun to write and a little scary too. And then I wrote a very personal essay last week about a unexpected turn in our infertility journey. So that's very relevant to this episode coming up. And of course, a recap of Purim. So all to say that Substack is hopping, and it's always great for you to know what's going on all platforms. And also, another exciting piece of news is that we are now on YouTube. So not the full episode, not the full video episode, but we are posting all the reels, all the clips. It's fun to kind of browse through and reminds you of older episodes that maybe you haven't listened to yet. So we're easing into YouTube and other platforms. Hopefully it's the start of many other fun and exciting growth, which is always the goal, right? So that's what we have going on. And today's episode's really exciting. It's our first return guest, and it's none other than my husband. And we recorded an episode last year, right around our anniversary. Go check it out, listen to it, because it's kind of like part one. If you haven't listened yet, it's definitely worth a listen. And this episode is part two. Also, our anniversary is in a week, so it's really kind of fun to kind of coincide it with our personal milestone. But this is a part two part one was where we talked about how we met and moving to Montana. And of course, we go off on a lot of tangents, but part two is a real deep dive in our infertility and adoption journey. We have spoken a lot about it on many different platforms, but this is the first time and place where we talk about it together, where we're not on somebody else's agenda, like we're not being interviewed. We are kind of controlling the conversation and the narrative, which then allows us to go much deeper and share things that we have never shared before. So I kind of like to call it a tell-all, although we're not telling all because there are some stuff that are still private. But it's the place where you could go to get the comprehensive story of our infertility adoption journey. It's where you'll get almost all the information in one place. It doesn't exist anywhere else. And I'm really excited for you to listen. So without further ado, my husband, part two. I really hope you enjoy. If you want to sponsor, please reach out. I think it's not a secret that podcasts are funded through sponsorships and advertisements. There's no secret way to go about it. And I would love to partner with all of you and any of you. Please reach out. All my contact information is in the show notes. And we're very grateful to all our partnerships and all our sponsorships. It looks hilarious. I can't. Okay, anyway, but the sound is good. So we will make that sacrifice. Okay, so here we are. Are you ready?
You asked me to use Menny's headphones, and now you're looking at me like I'm a air traffic controller.
Well, I didn't know that Menny's headphones had that little mic thing that is very distracting. It's okay.
Anyone doesn't like how it looks, they can blame you.
It is. They definitely can blame me, but the sound is very good, so we're going to take it.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay. So we are here almost a year later since our first episode, and I thought it would be fun to have a yearly kind of update and episode with you that falls out around our anniversary. So this will come out close to our anniversary.
20th anniversary.
20th anniversary, which is insane.
Is it a bigger miracle that I stayed with you or that you stayed with me? You're being recorded.
Is it even a question? Like, what's the question here? Like,
I assume you mean.
I don't understand what the question is. I think
let the crowd judge.
The crowd will decide. So we're here. I'm wearing do you recognize the shirt?
Yes.
I'm wearing it from our
Monday date.
Monday. We went on a date, and we do a coffee date every Monday, which is incredible. But this time I was like, I need some retail therapy.
It was way more expensive than the expensive coffee.
Yes, that's why this doesn't happen often. But it's well-deserved retail therapy. And I got this shirt, so I thought it was perfect to wear for the podcast today. Okay, so what we're doing, though, we're not really just doing like a random update. What we're doing is something very cool, and we haven't done it before. And it's kind of scary, but I think we got this. But we are going to do like a tell-all comprehensive infertility adoption story from the beginning to where we are now with the both of us. And what's unique about this is that we get to tell the story from start to finish on our terms with the both of us here. A lot of you will be familiar with many parts of our story. You have done a lot of speaking about it. I have done a lot of speaking about it. We've been on podcasts about it. We've been on even a podcast together about it. But when you're on a podcast and it's like an hour podcast and the podcaster obviously has an agenda, as they should, you get little bits and pieces. And we just thought that this is a really amazing opportunity to have our story kind of documented from start to finish with us both together, both of our perspectives, and have it live here on my podcast. So
I don't know that it's
kind of scary.
It's not start to finish because it ain't over.
Exactly. That's so true. It's never start to finish. And of course, you will get the part of the story that is appropriate and we feel comfortable sharing. I don't know if I should say tell all, because we're not telling all. It obviously goes without say that we have our boundaries, and especially regarding to our kids and all that stuff, we have a way that we navigate our story that is appropriate for the public. But I think we're pretty open. We share a lot. We probably share a lot more than other people do. So I don't know. I think it's kind of scary, but it's exciting. How do you feel about it?
I am not scared. I don't think at this point there's anything scary about sharing our journey. I think the beauty of it will be first hearing it from the horse's mouth in the trajectory and the way it played out, instead of bits and pieces that don't seem to have a proper timeline and
Mm,
understanding. And it has the
mhm.
pros and the cons. Just like, I'm not in charge of biological children,
Yeah.
but just like not everyone is fit for all forms of parenting, our story is not necessarily a perfect match for anyone else on earth besides us. I'm not even sure it's a perfect match for us. We're still working on that part.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's definitely a perfect match for us because Hashem decided that, but it doesn't always feel that way. And oh, yeah, that goes without say that when you share your particular story and journey, it's very important to remember that it's our journey and it's our story. And we we make the choices and we do the things that we do with our knowledge and our understanding and our experience. And no one should ever apply, things that they hear from somebody else's story to them in a practical way without really understanding your own journey yourself. And you will see throughout our story, we have had so much guidance and so much support. So I think without further ado, let's do it.
Okay.
Okay. So starting off, I think if you listen to our first episode, we're not really going to do like timeline, married, this, that. Like, I think we're going to kind of jump right into our first kind of understanding and discovery that we needed to seek outside counsel with our fertility. Like, we weren't getting pregnant right away. Do you remember, like, when did that start? Like, and how did that start?
It started about a year after we were married. So we were already in Montana.
Yeah.
And then we started getting, we were playing house. We bought a house. We were newlyweds. We knew each other for a little over a year at that point. And, when a year passes and there's no sign of pregnancy, and we did our fair amount of pregnancy tests, I hope CVS is grateful to me one day for my
Man,
investment.
I hate pregnancy tests. They're the worst.
Well, in our case, I think they're
Well,
also
exactly, because there
they're a
were never good
trigger, and
results, so it's very
exactly.
triggering.
And so we started getting a little curious. I still remember maybe 2 months after we moved to Montana, I was in New York, maybe for the Rebbe's yard site, and I went to speak to a prominent Rav, a prominent rabbi in Crown Heights, and the cluelessness was
Mhm.
both mind-boggling and hurtful,
Yeah.
because I felt immediately that it was sort of a standard answer of what you tell every couple struggling, without recognizing that there's an increased rate in infertility, that there's male infertility, there's female infertility, there's all different types of issues. And to give a blanket answer, and the answer was, Far 2 Jahr, before 2 years, you don't have to bother.
I
And
remember that.
oh, I do too.
Yeah.
And I remember banging my hand on the table in the rabbi's house and telling him, "What do you mean? The Rebbe writes in the name of his father-in-law, as you have to have self-sacrifice to have children. You have to go above and beyond. What do you mean 2 years? Why would I sit around and wait 2 years?" But I made no headway.
But you know what? It's also interesting because on the one hand, I think in the medical world, they would maybe even say a similar thing, like, "Oh, this thing happens, nothing to worry about. What's your rush?" Like, whatever. But it's very interesting when it's your own experience and you kind of like know in your gut, like this is something that needs to be addressed. And why, if you know that it's something that needs to be addressed, we had no indications, we had no previous medical history that was like, okay, you're going to struggle, but we had an intuition and we knew. And when someone says, "Oh, just wait," it's like, but for what? Like, we know that we're going to need to, something's going on. And why wait another year to figure that out?
Yeah, we had good reason to believe that something was fishy.
Yeah.
We didn't think it was catastrophic. We didn't think it meant
Yeah.
permanent infertility. We just thought there was something that needs to be dealt with.
Yeah.
And I still remember we called our friend of blessed memory, Dr. Fishman in Houston, Texas, Irving
Yep.
Fishman.
Mm-hmm.
And he introduced us to a friend of his who was a doctor in New York on Park Avenue. And that was the first time we went to seek guidance. Now, this doctor was not connected to any of the major Jewish organizations that deal with infertility. So we were still doing this
Kind
sort
of
of
on our own.
solo.
Yeah.
We also went in Texas to one of your dad's friends.
An endocrinologist. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. He was
Dr.
great.
Fishman was a urologist.
Yeah.
The doctor in San Antonio, I don't remember his name, but he was an endocrinologist. And I remember speaking to Rabbi Chaim in Cleveland and Rabbi Heller in Crown Heights and Rabbi Schusterman in LA. And I was doing my rounds of consulting with rabbis. And what became clear to me pretty early on is that most rabbis, as wonderful as they may be, most rabbanim, at the time at least, were fairly clueless in the realm of infertility, in the realm of treatments. There were exceptions to that, like Rabbi Olam in Sydney, I think Rabbi Fedelstock in Argentina, but most rabbis.
Do you think it's changed in the last, because this was 20 years ago or 19 years ago?
I don't know that it's changed, but there's more rabbanim, and there's more rabbanim that have gone into the realm of being knowledgeable in infertility. I think also
younger rabbanim, like who are growing up in this generation.
Correct, and also there's more cases of infertility.
Right.
I'm not the expert on the numbers, but I'm fairly certain that not just in the Jewish community, but in the general population, there's a lot more infertility. There's definitely a lot of more male infertility, which was never spoken about before. So the rabbis, the new rabbanim, the younger rabbanim are definitely becoming more knowledgeable, which is helpful because honestly, there's young couples who were in situations like we were, and I'm really happy for them that there's someone to consult with because we were going in circles and it was getting pretty annoying.
And I think at the end of the day, we kind of took matters into our own hands at a certain point. I mean, we didn't do anything, crazy, but it was just like, okay, we need to really follow our gut and start to figure this out without so much outside guidance.
Well, what I agree with you. We took matters into our own hand, but not in the sense that we, God forbid, broke any of the rules. In the sense that instead of waiting for the rabbanim to figure out their answers, we went to Bonei Olam pretty early on, and in the beginning they were almost hesitant to even talk to us. Like they were talking to us, but it was like, oh, we deal with couples that are married for 10 years, 5 years, not an hour and a half. You guys are barely married, but they also their gut. And remember, our guy at Bonei Olam at the time was a young man named Avram Fuchs. Remember that name?
Oh my gosh, I will never forget. He was amazing.
And he held our hand through the process. And even though we were less than 2 years married at the time, they helped us not only with getting appointments, but they helped us financially, which was a big deal. We were not residents of the state of New York, so we were coming from Montana. They didn't owe us anything. They didn't know us. And they took us under their wing, Rabbi Buchner and his team, who we are forever indebted to, even though the results were not what we wanted them to be. I still speak to Reb Shlomo Buchner because he's still a friend. And that goes back to that period of time, which I guess at this point is almost 18 and a half years ago, a long time ago.
Yeah. So what we ended up doing was it became pretty clear pretty early on that we needed a bunch of procedures, and we needed on both of our ends, we had things that we had to do, and we had to be in New York because in Bozeman, Montana, there was no infertility specialists at all. No specialists in general. It's like you can have a baby, you can get stitches, don't have a heart attack, don't have infertility, don't have anything that's life-threatening. So we ended up going through Cornell. Was it Cornell?
I think it was Columbia Presbyterian.
Columbia. Yeah. So we ended up scheduling you had a procedure. I was going through IVF, and we scheduled it Erev.
Well, they scheduled it.
Well, yeah,
Sunday,
we did not choose that.
Shavuos.
Sunday, Erev, Shavuos.
And the plan was that we would stay in the city.
18 years ago. So, and we remember we worked with Bikar Chaylim because we needed an apartment. Like, we had to be basically down there for Shavuos, and we had an apartment, and your family was incredible. Like, they like loaded up the apartment with food for Yantif. Was it a 3-day? No, it wasn't. Sunday. It wasn't 3 days. And we were like really all prepared to be there for Shavuos. And yeah, the surgery was Sunday morning or afternoon.
First of all, Shabbos, you had to go get some injections for the IVF.
Right.
And so,
I had to do them. I had them. I could do them on my own.
I'm saying, but we had to go to the hospital on Shabbos. And we had to, I walked up the staircase because it was a couple of flights of stairs, and we stayed at a place.
Because you
for
have to
Shabbos.
get, I don't know, I'm sure many of you who are listening have gone through or know someone who's gone through IVF. Like you have to get the injection at a certain time and it has to be done a certain time. And oh my gosh, wow. Actually, I didn't remember that.
And then
now I do.
after the treatments, we walked about 25 blocks.
Yep, to
We went to
Chesky
visit
and
my
Perry.
friend Chesky and Perry Wolf. Spent Shabbos afternoon with them, and then Sunday morning.
I forgot that we had to be there for Shabbos also. Yeah. Okay. And then Sunday afternoonish. It wasn't even early morning because.
Well, there were 6 procedures that day. There were 6 couples through Bonei Olam that were going through the procedure Erev Shavuos. That's when the doctor had available. And I believe that Bonei Olam and the doctor referred to that Sunday as Black Sunday.
Black Sunday.
Because it was
Nobody
6
was
cases
successful.
with total there was no success for any of them.
Yeah.
I still remember one of the couples. They came all the way from England, and they were there that Sunday with us.
I remember that too. I remember sitting in the waiting room with your mother, my mother-in-law, and basically it was like a 2-hour procedure, and then the doctor comes to the waiting room, and very bad bedside manner. He was just like, "Sorry, not going to happen." I think he said something like, "You're not having biological kids. Like, that's not happening." And I'm just standing there and I'm
ingesting.
Well, how old am I? 23? 24?
No, 23.
23 years old. Like, and then I'm like, your mother's in the waiting room. Like, I just spoke to the doctor, like I think about this. I was a 23. I was a baby. And I didn't have any of my family there. It was Erev Shavuos. And then I had to tell your mother, you were still like not around. And then it was like, well, it's Erev Shavuos. There is no need for us to be here, like to stay in this apartment for Shavuos.
The reason you would stay for Shavuos was because they would have to do part of the IVF treatment on Yom Tov, and you needed to be close by. Right. But once that ship sailed, we're like, let's get out of here.
So you had to first wake up and you had to first come out of anesthesia, and then we had to communicate somehow.
There's not much communication. We had about 10 seconds to make a decision.
And then we're like, okay. And then it was like, Pashut Erev Yom Tov. So then we're like, okay, we're going home. And it was Yankee, Rachel, and Mushki. They were amazing. And they were just like, we packed up the apartment. And
do you remember when we pulled up to the house?
It was Shkia.
It was Lichtbench. And they were about to light candles for Shabbos, for Yom Tov. And that's when we pulled up.
And it's so, to like even sit with that now.
It feels like decades ago.
It feels like another lifetime. It also is like...
My mother was still alive.
Your mother was still alive.
My 3 siblings were still single.
Yeah.
We still had the house on President Street. We were married for like 2 years, not even, barely 2 years. And the reality is that there are so many couples that go through the exact same scenario where they're told the same news. And in most cases, my family showed up just to help us. But emotionally, most couples that hear that news are really left to mull through it themselves.
But I want to say, Chaim Shal, I don't think there was a lot of mulling. Like, I don't think we had, first of all, we went like from the most shocking news of our life to like having to operate, get home, just get to Yom Tov. And then we're spending Yom Tov with your family, which was incredible, but also like not a lot of time to process.
There was a moment, I think, on the second night of Yom Tov or the first night of Yom Tov where you let it all out. In other words, where it really hit you, it was almost 24 hours later.
Yeah.
Where you able finally...
First of all, I'm hopped up on hormones. And then I'm like, it was very uncomfortable.
And the challenge of that is that there's this, each spouse is trying to support the other.
And also grieving at the same time.
And neither of them knows what to do with their own feelings, but they also don't want to see their spouse suffer through this. So it creates
it's a mess.
It's a big mess. There's a reason why, if you look at Jewish tradition, if you look in the Gemara and look in the Medrash, when it talks about infertility, the language that's used regarding infertility and what that does to a couple, emotionally, mentally, physically, it's pretty sharp stuff. Not as it's just the reality of when you talk about hard things in this world, when you talk about extreme things like blindness and death and all this stuff that we see, infertility is lumped in there because though the world has come a long way with infertility, when someone
and it's become a lot more common, so I think it's become a lot more accepted in a way that's like, oh, it's not like, so a lot of people struggle with it. But we also had a very extreme situation. Like there's a lot of varying degrees of infertility, right? And I will be the first to say there's not one is better than the other. I'm not saying that going through 13 cycles of IVF is better than what we went through. Like I can't even imagine. But there are very different varying degrees of infertility. There's very different experiences.
Oh, then there's even secondary infertility. I mean, there's
100%.
And no one's to judge.
But I think what was unique about our situation, I'm not saying we're the only ones in the world, but it is more unique, is to be 23 years old and have such a definitive diagnosis and having to figure out how to process that. And I think we didn't really process a lot of it for a long time. I'm still processing it in therapy.
I think I'm just starting to process it.
I agree. I think, first of all, at that age, what tools do we have? First of all, we're just married. Second of all, what tools do we have? And especially coming from our generation, like we weren't the generation that was growing up with therapy, and our parents, like it wasn't that prevalent to have all these mental, emotional tools. Like we kind of did what we did and we survived and we even thrived. Like I feel like it's pretty miraculous that we made it in the way that we did.
Yeah, I think also, there's this books that almost every Chabad house has on the shelf. One of them is called Permission to Believe. One of them is called Permission to Receive. It's about the authenticity of Torah from Sinai, from Har Sinai. I think that the same rabbi or maybe someone else needs to write a book called Permission to Grieve, because we never felt. Now I feel like I can. Back then was like, if I grieve, then first of all, I'm not strong enough for my spouse because then I'm grieving. Second of all, at the time my mother was still alive.
Does grieving also mean that you don't believe?
No. On the contrary, when you're grieving and when you're angry and when you're sad, and despite all that, you still have a relationship with Hashem, that's actually novel.
Right, but that's not how it was. We didn't know that. Like,
no,
that's not how we're taught. Yeah, no, now we understand that. But back then it was like, and then you're struggling. Like for me, I don't know if this was a struggle for you, but for me, it was a very big struggle to face reality. And then you have the people that are like, believe in miracles. And for a long time, I spent so much time in this no man's land of like, I need to face the reality, the facts on the ground that Hashem has put before me, right? We use doctors. We live in a physical world. We're supposed to live within nature. And of course, as Jews, we always live above nature, but we're living in the world. There has to be a way to function within it. And then all the like miracles and segulais and davenings and kfarim and all these things. And at a certain point, I remember so clearly, we'll go back because I'm jumping ahead a little, but I remember so clearly it was my 30th birthday. And I'll tell you why I remember this so clearly, because I wasn't feeling good. And I had like all pregnancy-like symptoms. And I was like, maybe I'm pregnant. This is 10 years, like, okay, 7 years into this diagnosis. And of course, I like go and take a pregnancy test. And of course, it's like negative. And I'm like, that's it. I am not doing this anymore. I believe in Hashem, and I believe in Hashem in the reality that he gave me. I am not spending my time relying on the fact that I'm going to have some miracle story. I can't do it. It's keeping me in this place of no man's land, and it's messing with my head. And I remember that was like a huge transition, and it was very, very good for my mental health, and very, very a huge stepping stone in my journey. And of course, there are times like now when I think like, if only I actually believed in miracles, maybe I would have had one.
Well, first of all, you can believe that miracles are possible and not live in a world waiting for them to happen.
You can't. It's not. I don't know. Maybe some people know how to do that.
I can. Meaning, if someone asks me,
I couldn't do that.
I believe miracles can still happen.
Yeah.
But I
Me
don't
too.
I don't
41
sit around
years
waiting.
old. What's
44
miracles
years old. I don't sit around waiting for them to happen. And I think there's, we had that period of time where not only were there all the segulas and all these special, unique things. Remember, my mother sent me the sand from, I think, Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Someone
We
sent
did a
her
lot
that.
of things just because, like, to make the others feel good.
Yeah, she said, whatever, eat sand from Saudi Arabia. I mixed it with applesauce and I ate it. My father, may he live and be well, a friend of his told him that if you go to Hadich, to the Alter Rebbe in Ukraine, to the resting place of the founder of the Chabad movement, it's a blessing for children. So my father and I spent 3 days on a journey to go to Hadich. And it was a wonderful trip, a father and son trip.
Yeah.
And I hoped, I thought maybe. Then there's a wonderful man in Crown Heights who has special powers when he takes couples, especially the men, he takes them with him to the Rebbe's oil in Queens, that it brings blessings. So I did that too.
We hear a lot of miracle stories, and even like modern day, like there's the Rebbe stories, and then you hear the modern day miracle stories, and there's something about I don't know how to articulate. It's just like it's very difficult to hear miracle stories, and you're just not the recipient of one. And of course, like if you zoom out, our whole story is a miracle. It's just not the miracle that we were praying for or expecting or thinking that was, the one that we should be praying for. Like we have tons of miraculous things or hashgacha pratis or divine providence moments that only Hashem can orchestrate. But when it's not the one, like you end up with a biological child, it's a very weird feeling.
And there's a big trigger there because we grew up, and until today, we see stories about couples who didn't have children, and they start keeping the laws of family purity, of
That's
Taras
the worst.
and they suddenly 9 months and 1 day later, they pop out triplets. And you read the story, and you're like, we not only built Montana's only mikvah, but before that, we traveled every month.
Sacrifice it takes to go to the mikvah in Montana before we had one.
We drove to Utah. We flew to Utah.
It was such a huge commitment. And it's so funny because I recently had to fly to use a mikvah again because our mikvah is under construction. And it brought back so much of that, like, wow, like the sacrifice. It was actually a really, in a sense, amazing experience. I don't want to do it for very much longer. So hopefully this project wraps up. But it is an amazing experience to be in a position to wholly and with a lot of sacrifice do a mitzvah. Like you do, there's no logical reason. There's it, especially for us, like it's really not a thing that is, beneficial in any practical way. And yet you drop everything, no matter what day it is, and you fly to a mikvah and fly home. And I feel like it's such a act of service and an act of humility and an act of like, Hashem, I'm doing this for you. Like there's so many logical reasons why I shouldn't be doing this.
And doing it 20 years after being married when there is no biological kids on the horizon naturally.
Right.
It's a big deal. I also think that not only were people throwing the miracles at us, there was also another segment of people who, despite the fact that we were working with Bonei Olam and some of the top doctors in the universe, they were like, no. One guy walked over to me in 770 and said to me,
unsolicited.
Unsolicited advice at 2:00 in the morning after the banquet of the Kinnos HaShluchim, and he says, you guys should really go to Israel and spend the year in Israel. There's a doctor there in Jerusalem that does one. I remember thinking to myself, I just opened the Chabad house 2 years ago, so not only that we have infertility, but I should shut down the one thing I have left, which is my wife in the Chabad house, and let's move to Israel. And besides, who asked you for your advice?
And also, that's not any better than what we were doing. It's like we've gone over the years. There's so many like, oh, there's a new thing. And we like, okay, let's humor. And we show them our medical records and process. And they're like, sorry. Like you did it already. You're there. Like there's nothing left.
There was a doctor one year at the Chabad Rabbis Conference, a doctor from Philadelphia. I believe he was connected to Rabbi Sherman, Shraga Sherman. And he offered any Chabad couple that are shluchim that he would do treatments for free. Mm-hmm. So I reached out to him And I told him which doctor we had seen in Manhattan and what the procedures were. And he goes, don't bother coming to
Have
me.
a nice day.
So, and I appreciated that. At least
Yeah.
he's not taking me on another ride. And I think that's what you mentioned earlier about the people that have to go through God knows how many IVF cycles. The trauma of that, even if they do end up having a baby through the many cycles, what that does to your body physically.
I have to say, now I'm on this, like, we're jumping around a little, but that's how it goes. I'm a little bit on this like Ayurveda journey, which is like healing my body. And I can trace back, like we did a real deep dive on my symptoms and what I'm struggling with. And when it all started, clear, like mark of like after IVF, how all these little like symptoms started to creep up. And that's not to say IVF is a bad thing. It's just, we have to recognize that it takes a huge toll on our bodies. And I don't think there's enough credit and enough understanding about the people who have to go through that to have a child and how intense it is on so many levels. And so not only the emotional, but the toll that it takes on your body, because it's it's unnatural what you're trying to do. I mean, you're trying to do something natural, but in an unnatural way.
And it's someone that's growing up in, I don't know, in Great Falls, Montana, who doesn't live in a community, a Torah community, where we value having large families, and we see each biological child as an incredible gift from Hashem. And you're not in an environment where everyone's marching with their, what's it called? Not the what's the names of those fancy stroller companies? The doom buggy, the doom bugger, the doom buggy, the bugaboo. The other one, there's another one also. Whatever.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And we did it too later when we had adopted kids. But when you live in a community and you're walking on Kingston Avenue or 13th Avenue or Central Avenue in Five Towns, and everyone's pushing a stroller and a double stroller and a triple stroller, and they have kids on double-decker buses, and you're living there and you're going from treatment to treatment, from doctor to doctor, and they keep giving you the thumbs down. The emotional toll that creates is real. And in our case, and I could speak for myself from the conversations I've had, and maybe you could speak to some of the ones you've had, when guys reach out to me and they're struggling with infertility, the number one challenge is that they don't feel like their family gets it. And I always think about that because we were blessed that both sides of our families were incredibly supportive, each in their own way.
But I don't think they get it.
No. But I'm talking about where a couple is telling their parents that the doctors told us to go home.
Yeah.
And there's nothing left to do. And there's zero empathy, zero understanding, the zero grieving. It's, what do the doctors know?
Yeah. I can't imagine that. We are so blessed with our families for sure. But going back to where we kind of went off on a tangent about this, like the grieving process, I think that we grieved to the extent that we knew how. I don't even think the enormity and the gravity of something like that even sinks in right away. It's just like, I can just say from my experience that I only really started to understand and recognize the loss, like once I started having adopted kids and I had a therapist and I was having all these emotions that felt like I was ashamed about, like I shouldn't be having, because I have, thank God, beautiful children, but I was still stuck in grief. And only through that process of like really going back there and understanding and having a therapist who really was able to take me there and to and explain to me that one thing doesn't substitute the other. It's like, it's two different things. Like, yes, thank God, right now you have a beautiful family, and I'm so grateful for that. It doesn't mean that there's not a grieving process to be had, and there's not something immense that you lost by not being able to do the thing that you've always expected to do. That's considered a no-brainer, especially when we were just married. And I look back, sometimes I'm like, why didn't I grieve right away? Like, because
I know the answer.
We were in action mode, right? We were like, we're gonna fix this.
I know the answer to why we didn't grieve right away. And a big part of it is that we hadn't even driven away from the hospital yet. And your father called from Texas when he, to see how it went. and
Yeah.
you told him, and with wherever he got the strength and the clarity to say what he said, but he said something to the effect of, there must be children in this world that Hashem wants you to raise as your own.
I don't know what made him, first of all, it was an incredible thing to say. Like, it was so empathetic, and he said a lot of other things also. He was very empathetic,
I was still drugged up. That's all I remember.
very right there, but like also like to have the foresight and be like, okay, like Hashem has a plan for you. It wasn't to dismiss the grief. It wasn't, but what? Like, what? How did that even pop into his brain? I still don't know. And I don't even know if he remembers saying it, by the way.
But I think what that did was that
put action. Like, okay, we're gonna
correct.
Yeah.
So when you have 6 months and you don't have a plan, then you grieve. But if immediately someone plants the seed of a plan, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe the grieving wouldn't be a good thing back then.
Exactly.
I don't know.
I think about this a lot. It's like, if we would have gone into this big, deep black hole of grief right away, like, would we have been able to climb out of it? When you go into grief, but you have like a firm foundation, we're married longer, we have like, it just feels a little safer to go into the dark when it's just like, can you imagine if we would have gone there right away? I don't know what would have happened.
But also think about it. We before we went back to Montana after the diagnosis, we're talking maybe 2 weeks later, maybe 3 weeks later, and we decided to go talk to Rabbi Buchner together.
Yeah.
And we went into his basement office in Borough Park, and we asked him about adoption. He had adopted a child, and he's doing this for so many years, and he guided us a little bit. And that, in other words, we were already in such an action mode.
Yeah.
And so
pluses and minuses, man, like
Yeah,
pros
yeah.
and cons. There was so much like it needed to happen that way, but of course there's the downside to doing that. Of course.
But to me, I mean, it's sitting in a room with a devout Baba v'Chassid who has been around the block. He's seen it all, both personally and in the incredible work that he was doing and still does till this very day. He built an empire. I mean, there's tens of thousands of Jewish kids in the world today as a result of Shlomo Buchner's work.
It's incredible. Truly is incredible.
But I said to myself at the time, well, if he could do it in Bobov, and trust me, it was a struggle when he did it, because he said when he came into shul the first day after he adopted his daughter, his closest friends said to him, are we supposed to wish you mazel tov? Like, they didn't even know how to deal with adoption. He goes, yes, you're supposed to wish me mazel tov.
Mm-hmm.
So by him sharing with us, it sort of gave me, at least for me, it gave me sort of like an opening that if a guy in Borough Park with a stramel.
But it was very, it wasn't, I mean.
No, it wasn't popular, and it wasn't common, and it wasn't spoken of.
Exactly. He didn't really speak about it. He spoke to us because we were in that position, but it's not something that like, it was really an open experience.
No, and I think, I mean, I'm fast forwarding, but when you ended up speaking about it in public the first time and you were the one to speak about it, it was like shock and awe.
Okay, we're going to get there. We're going to get there because
let's not.
Okay, so here we are. Okay, so then we stayed in New York for another 2 weeks. I don't remember. It's all a blur, that part of it.
Yeah, we had to go back to the doctor before we went back to Montana. There was a whole process of. I think we even might have stayed. It could be we even stayed till Gimel Tammuz. We might have stayed for a month.
Wow, I don't remember that.
But it was all a blur. We were in our own La La Land.
Oh my gosh.
Not a positive La La Land, a negative La La Land. They have those too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, what did we do? Like, were we just like, I don't remember this at all. We're in our own little bubble.
See how the brain does tricks on us. It allows us to erase.
Literally. Oh my gosh. Okay, so then we go back to Montana. And then like reality hits a little bit more because it's like, okay, we have this big piece of news and yet we're kind of picking off where we left off. And then also that's when I went to MSU because I was like, we're new on Shlichus. It's not that we live in Bozeman, Montana. It's not that busy. We're building, but like I don't think people realize, I always say this, like, I don't think people realize when you first move on Shlichus, most people move on Shlichus with a baby. And I don't think people realize how much time you spend taking care of your family. So when you're in startup mode and you're building and there's like not a program every day and there's not something going on, you're not bored because you're taking care of your family. But like, think about moving into a new community and a small town. So it's not like you're in a hopping metropolitan, how much time you have. And I was bored.
So first of all, most shluchim move out, they have more than one kid.
Right.
So they're already moving out with, an operation that mostly the mother is dealing with. Secondly, the way it works, the way the Rebbe intended it to work, is that the rabbi, the shliach, is the one that's doing the majority of the outreach in the sense of going to the coffee shop and meeting new Jews and introducing ourselves to the community. You were doing wonderful Shabbos dinners, which truly were the foundation of our Chabad house and still is.
And also built a foundation on these one-on-one coffee dates too. But in the beginning, it's like you had to lay the groundwork. It wasn't me who was laying the groundwork. That's
correct.
For sure.
And I was visiting with politicians and I was driving around the state to give classes.
Right. You were traveling because we had this huge state under our jurisdiction and our responsibility, I would say. Yeah. And you would once a month go to all the cities around the state, and I was home. Once in a while, I came with you, but I really didn't want to either.
Right. Once a month in Helena, once a month in Great Falls, once a month in Billings, once a month in Missoula, and once every maybe 2-3 months up to Kalispell and Whitefish because it was much further. I mean, I was also, I think, yeshiva bacher. I was a married yeshiva bacher, so I had a wife at the time, but I still had the yeshiva student mentality, and we know how to keep ourselves busy. We're raising money. We're writing articles for the newspaper. We're getting ourselves into the newspaper, out of the newspaper to keep ourselves busy. And we also made a choice. I don't think it was a deliberate choice. I said, well, if we don't have kids, might as well live it up. And so we did have trips to LA and we'd go,
we did that's something that we did so right. And I say this a lot. No matter what was going on, I always say, like, we didn't want to be miserable. Like, we made a choice to not be miserable and depressed. Did we have hard days? Absolutely. Were there days that I didn't get out of bed? 1,000%.
I never had those days.
Yeah, no, that's not how you
5 a.m., baby, out of bed no matter what.
But that's like the opposite extreme, right? But we're like, we don't have kids to support. Like, we don't have the limitations that having a family does provide. So we did a ton of travel. We had so much fun. So I can look back on those years, and I don't look back on those years and feel and tap into misery. When we talk about certain parts, I'm like, oh wow, that was a big deal. But in general, like, we really took that opportunity. First of all, we got to know each other. I always say, like, I can't imagine having a baby like in the first year of marriage. I always, like, as much as I'm so happy for everybody that happens to, I'm also like a little bit like, that's a little scary.
I remember buying you jewelry, and we would joke that I'm buying you the jewelry because we don't have the expensive diapers and
exactly.
kids. So we have all this money, which we didn't have, but we made believe
pretended.
We had.
We're like, wow, what look what.
And I'd buy gifts. I'd buy gifts that were out of potentially our league. But, normally 3 years into a marriage, you have 3 kids popping around and just the expense of living.
Honestly, that really worked for me. Gifts, it really worked. I literally full circle to how we just started.
It's your love language and your retail therapy. It's all retail of it together.
Therapy. It's funny because I always feel like I have to defend this concept of retail therapy. And of course, like, it's not going to solve your problem, but there is something to be said for just finding an outlet and just enjoying life and getting something like, so this week, right? Why did I need retail therapy? Because we have a season where your sisters and my sisters are having babies. We had 4 babies in the last 2 weeks or whatever. And you know what? I'm 41 years old and it's still hard. Am I in crisis mode? No. Am I in a bad place? No. There's no big, huge, I'm fine. But also, like, it's in a little bit of an emotional roller coaster, especially when, it's your sisters or sister-in-laws that are very similar to your age. And there's like, getting in the last babies. And I'm like, I'm not ready to have, like, I always say, like, Chana Laya is 8 years old. Like, I'm not ready to be in that stage of life. Like, I'm still young. Like, so It is hard,
Also,
but
you publicized everywhere that you're a maximalist, so it doesn't even matter. You don't have to apologize for
I
retail
know.
therapy. You're just a
Shoot.
maximalist.
I'm
So
not even like I'm not even like sharing something new here, you know.
no, you're not.
I was,
Did you ever did you ever write an article about being high maintenance or no?
what? Cannot believe you just said that.
And it's
I am not high maintenance.
oh, there you go. I was waiting for you to argue. No problem. Thank you.
Being a maximalist and being high maintenance are two different things.
She likes her love language is gift. She likes retail therapy. She's a maximalist, but she's not high maintenance. She's
And
super
I like to
low
travel.
maintenance. She likes to travel.
And I like nice things, and I like luxury.
She's low maintenance.
But I don't
But also,
demand. I don't demand them.
I remember during that period before we had kids, I think I got more triggered and bothered than you in some way.
Yeah.
You went to Texas and you were there with your younger sister, Rachela.
No, she gave birth in New York. I went to New York.
Oh, you went to New York.
Yes.
And you were with her. You were with her when she gave birth to her first kid.
Yeah.
And I was like, what kind of psycho are you? Who wants to go watch the misery play out? Now, you say misery. Yes, she's having a baby. It's a big simcha, but that's your younger sister. And you were diagnosed with infertility, but yet that motherly instinct, that sisterly instinct, which you still have till today for all your sisters, is an incredible thing. I wasn't there. I didn't want to talk to you. You had a baby. Get away from me. I don't want to talk to you. You don't even realize how lucky you are. You're going to fetch to me. I've had friends and relatives who say, "Oh, I'm tired. My kid kept me up." I'm like, seriously? You're telling that to me? Get out of here. What's wrong with you? I wish I had a kid keeping me up. At the time, that's what I was thinking to myself.
But now we get that.
No, now I get it a lot. But
in spades. Yeah, I think for me, I could integrate and process so much more with being involved and like in it than like removing myself and like putting up these protections. Like to me, that was just like, oh, that is not what I want to do. So I kind of went like the other way and I'm like, I want to be like here, you know, and I want to feel it and face it and like just be in it.
and the reality is that we each have, and I know this sounds cliche because every podcast of hope says the same thing, but we lived it, so I feel comfortable saying it, is that we have a choice to make every morning when we wake up.
Yeah.
And that applies today as much as it applied then.
So now I think it applies more today, honestly.
Well, it applies now
there.
when you have older kids making decisions that are not in sync with our values, and you have to wake up and say, am I going to let that bog me down permanently? Or am I going to grieve through it? I'm going to feel bitter and sad and then pick myself up literally by my bootstraps and live life happily and change the world for the better.
It always comes back to that for me. It's like I have one life. Do I want to be miserable? I really don't want to be miserable. I want to have miserable days. There are days where I'm like, I am doing it. I am in a bad mood and I'm committing. But it's for a very short period of time. Like at the end of the day, I'm like, I have one life. Like I want to have fun.
I think for both of us, when you say misery, you know, misery is really an expression of sadness. So we're not, no one wakes up, we don't wake up and say, oh, I want to be mad.
Yeah.
We're grieving.
We're sad.
And we don't know how to talk about the grief because it's a lot harder to talk about grief than to be angry. Angry is easy. I love being angry because it allows me to let out, the smoke from my ears, the steam, without actually expressing the deep, deep, raw feelings that exist. So when we see the anger or the misery as simply an expression of what it really is, which is grief, then of course we don't want it to continue. No one wants to live their life in grief forever. And anyone that you meet that did make that choice, or maybe they felt like it wasn't a choice, but they've been living with grief for a very, very long time, it's unhealthy, it's un-Jewish, and it's, like you said, you live once, chapadain.
Right. And maybe those people, honestly, don't have a choice, and their mental health just kicks in, and
that's
they
different.
feel.
When you deal with mental health, it's a very different reality, and for that, I'm not judging people.
Yeah.
I don't judge people that are miserable, especially if it's for a good reason. I'm just saying there is another option, which is to wake up and say, I live in a beautiful place called Montana. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe some of them live in New York and LA and it's very hard for them. But I wake up and I see this beautiful world that Hashem has given us. And I see the beautiful family that Hashem created for us. and I see the wonderful wife that I get to be married to, and I see the wonderful community I get to be a shepherd of an incredible flock. I say to myself, sure, there's definitely days that I'm not happy, but if I choose to live that way, so I'll die miserably. Whoopie-doo.
I think there's like you get really good at, which is like also the cliche of like holding many feelings at the same time. And I think for me, like you just get really good at holding, because that grief doesn't really ever go away. And it ebbs and flows, right? Like sometimes it shows up more than others, but there's always that little piece there. But you can hold it simultaneously and at the same time as living your best life, being so grateful for what you have and choosing to show up. And I think so often we think it has to be one or the other. Or I think so often it's like, oh, if I'm grieving, it means that I'm not grateful. No, if I'm grieving, I am aware of all the things that I'm grateful of, but I'm grieving right now, or vice versa. I'm grateful, but it doesn't also mean that, like when I see all my family having babies, I can genuinely tell you that there's many emotions happening at the same time, and they're all valid and they don't cancel each other out. Like I am so excited and happy whenever a baby is born, like genuinely. And I know maybe you can't say that for yourself, but for me, it's real. Like, and it's like my flesh and blood, literally. Like it's exciting. And at the same time, I can recognize like, wow, this is hard for me. And especially when a lot of it happens at the same time. And so we're going to go shopping.
You've been teaching Tanya for a very long time.
Yeah.
I just joined the bandwagon, but I mean, in essence, what you're saying is what the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, that there's an internal wrestling match that goes on between our two hearts, the two sides of our heart. And so it doesn't only play out in spirituality, right? Actually, the quote from the Zohar is, "Chedvat kieh b'li boy misitra da." The one hand of my heart, I'm joyous, and the other hand, it's priya, it's sadness, it's bitterness. How could that both go on at the same time? So I think that's the wrestling match. And some days, the bitter side overcomes.
100%. And we have that even recently. Like we've had really intense days where it almost feels like the darkness is going to take over. And we're also like, we've done this for so long, we're tired, we're giving up. We're done pulling ourselves up from the bootstraps. There's days that it feels that way.
Right, but there's also the reality that you can make that choice of invoking the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And just because yesterday was bitter and dark doesn't mean today needs to be.
Yeah.
And, again, I think everyone's struggle is different. And when I see other people's struggles, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could ever deal with that. And it's funny. Because they look at us and they go, oh my gosh, I could never deal with that. And I'm like, well, I guess that's what it means. Lafum gam l'shichna, that Hashem only gives the camel as much as a load it can handle. And he clearly thinks we can handle a lot. But,
yeah.
I mean, are we going into the adoption or are we going to just stick with infertility?
No, we're going to go into the adoption. But we started off, but we didn't finish this, like living in Montana without a family. So then I was like, okay, like I'm kind of bored. I need to be busy. I need to like not just also like being bored. Also, there's a lot of positives to being bored. I know when kids are young, but as an adult, it's like then you wallow, right? And then you're just stuck in. So I ended up signing. What do you call registering?
You said, I don't know if you remember. You said, "Why don't I go to school?"
Yeah.
And I said, at the time, our friend Marty Foxman was living in Great Falls, and he was involved in MSU Great Falls. So I called him and I said, Marty, we are young, we are poor, so we probably can get a scholarship. Chavie's smart, and there's a program at MSU in Bozeman for interior design. What do I need to do to get her in and to get a scholarship? So he guided us. He didn't do it for us, but he guided us how to get it done. And I think that's September. So we had our infertility diagnosis in early June. And that September, you started classes with Patricia, was your professor. Remember back then? And the interior design school at Montana State University.
And I went for 2 years.
Yeah, I don't remember when exactly you dropped in or dropped out, but you were there for a while.
And it was the best thing that I did.
And you were learning about all these, I forget the names of all those artists, but all these famous architects.
Yeah, all these different architects.
In Chicago and in Europe.
Yeah. It was great. I also, like, I knew that I wasn't in my heart of hearts, I knew that I wasn't going to get a degree and I wasn't going to be an interior designer. I had a job that I was really
Well, actually,
proud of.
I think you became an interior designer. The problem is you only have one client, and it's me, and that doesn't work out financially so well. So instead of making money, you went to school and cost your husband a lot of money for your design.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm good with that. But it was really great, and it served a really, really important purpose. And then when we adopted Chaya, then I was like, okay, like I can't be a shlucha and be a mom and go to school. So that's when that like fell by the wayside, and it served its purpose.
And you were actually you were unsure about dropping out, and I still remember telling you.
I don't remember that.
Well, you didn't want to, you had I think a year left or whatever, and I was like,
but I didn't take any of the core classes, like all the English and math. So I'm like, I'm never going to get my degree anyway.
All your big folders with all your artsy fartsy stuff, and we'll stick it in storage. And if you ever decide to go back, it'll be readily available for you. Of course, that never happened, but I was not concerned about you getting a degree. I was concerned about filling your time. And once there was a baby in the picture, Baruch Hashem, your time was filled, and it hasn't been emptied ever since.
Yeah, and I still dream of going back to school for different things. Like, I love school. Like, I love classes, but I can't handle like the homework and the reports and the tests. But like, you know how always the deadlines were always like, I can't handle deadlines.
You can't handle the parking on campus. There's a whole list of things you can't handle. You basically want a chauffeur to drop you off at the class and not have to take tests and get a degree. That doesn't really work.
Not even get a degree, just learn.
Right.
How many courses have I signed up for in my life? Like just sitting in my bed, right? Like I just love that kind of stuff. But we did have a parking ticket situation.
Yes.
We just part of the expense. Okay, so during this whole time, we're trying to figure out how to go the adoption route.
And we started, you started school in September. And around that time, maybe a little bit before, I started making phone calls. I had a phone call with my Aunt Rivki in Israel to see what the situation in Israel was. It turns out it's not a good situation. It's a socialist country. And people adopting from Israel to out of the country is almost impossible. I have a good friend today he's a good friend. Back then I didn't even know him. His name was Shia from Borough Park, who got involved and helped us. You remember back in the day, a Belzer Chassid, wonderful man. We had a friend Zelig who helped us. I was in touch with Rabbi Wolf in Odessa at the time to see if Ukrainian adoption was an option.
We didn't really have anything to go on. We were really just starting from scratch and trying to navigate and figure out like, okay, yes, maybe we want to do this thing, but how do we do it? Was so overwhelming. Like, how do we even do this? And then we also, I think Zelig was the one that told us we had to get like certified. So we had to do all the legal stuff to even be eligible for adoption. Let's say you have a situation where you can potentially adopt a child, but if you're not certified in your state to be a eligible adoptive parent, then there's nothing to talk about.
Right.
So we went through that whole process.
So, and in many states, the Jews call Jewish Family Services or the Jewish Federation.
Right.
We were in Montana, so there was two options: Lutheran Social Services or Catholic Social Services, and we ended up going with CSSM, Catholic Social Services of Montana.
They were great. What's his name? Remember?
Wonderful.
Sam. And so he did our original home study, but then after we adopted multiple children, what happens is people actually also don't know this if you're not in the game. But once you adopt, they come and check on you. Can you imagine if every biological parent had to do that?
They check your refrigerator to make sure there's food. They check the fire extinguishers to make sure they're functional.
So I don't remember. Is it like till a year old?
Yeah.
They come randomly a few times.
They come randomly and they have to file reports with the court.
And you need to have a doctor's.
And that's after the initial home study.
So because he was like the only one in the state, we got to know him so well because we had multiple adopted kids and he kept having to come and he was excellent.
He was from Columbus, Montana. So he drove about an hour and a half to come to our house. He was understanding both because he was a religious man and a very sweet man. So he did his job and he did it well and he didn't play games and he wrote extensive reports.
Loopholes.
No loopholes, but
he was nice about it, which was nice.
He was just a mensch, and I'm always grateful for that time because I've heard enough
stories.
Can you
imagine? I just feel like, could you imagine? I think back at that sometimes. It's like someone coming to check on how you're parenting and if you are
No,
safe.
before you're parenting, to see if you're even worthy of being a parent.
Okay, and then, but I think it's even worse when it's like you have a newborn infant and you're being checked on. Like, what a concept.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
It was an interesting part of the journey, but we're grateful that we got that done in advance.
Yeah.
Meaning that's the first
we
thing
were
I
ready.
tell him.
So we were ready. So we did that and it was very annoying to do. It took a long time and
It was
books to
annoying.
read and
It was expensive.
and remember the fingerprints, because my fingerprints never worked.
They have to put you through the system to make sure you have no records.
I had to go and do my fingerprints multiple times because I don't have fingerprints basically.
But I'm saying people don't realize you get a DUI when you're 22. What's the big deal? Well, if it's on your record and you need to adopt a child, that can have a major effect on the decision of the agencies and the court about whether you are worthy of being a parent. So it's an interesting process. We did it with the guidance of probably Zelig, and we had it done. And then it just sat around in a closet. We had the paperwork, and we kept calling and trying. And then we realized in the process that in the adoption world, there's an underlying sort of black market where people are doing things that are not 100% legit. And thank God we were guided by the people, the right people who educated us, and we stayed as far as possible. Not only didn't do that, but anytime I heard anything that sounded remotely questionable, we ran the other way.
Yeah.
And when you're doing everything legitimately, it's even a longer process.
Yeah.
And
but what ended up happening was we ended up being more open. Like you sent an email, I think maybe to what was that email? The Shulchan exchange. What's it called? Does it still exist?
Yeah. Shulchan Achtos.
Shulchan Achtos.
That's right. Now you're reminding me that I sent an open email.
Email that we are looking to adopt if there's a situation in your community or if something comes up. Obviously, 100% down the legal path, but sometimes something arises and just let us know. And that's literally how we adopted all 5 of our children.
Well, the first one in particular was not through the email, right? Chaya.
Yeah.
That was through my conversation with a friend. Maybe we should just go to that because that's what we're up to in the story.
Yeah.
So you started school. We started snooping around. Nothing was playing out. And that November, December, I went to New York for the Chabad Rabbis Conference. And you were in San Antonio. You went to Texas for the weekend that I was in New York. And I was sitting in Shul Shabbos morning, and I see my friend from Moscow, Yossi, walk in the door. Hadn't seen him in a couple of years. We did all the niceties, and then we were sitting and chatting, and I finally felt...
We were in Russia a few years before.
Right. Well, I spent 4 summers in Russia. Or no, I spent 3 summers in Russia and then 2 other visits. Anyhow, we're sitting and chatting, and he asks me, so Nu, what's going on? Which is a nice Orthodox way of saying, why are you married to 3 kids without children?
3 years.
Right? And so I figured he's a close enough friend. I unburdened, I think they call it today. I unburdened myself to him. And I could tell as I was talking, his face changed. I could see that he was grieving with me. And that makes sense. We were very close. And, so I rambled. And then at the end, I said, Yossi, you never know. If anything ever comes your way that's related to adoption, you'll let me know. Sort of matter-of-factly, like casually, not thinking much of it. And then that Saturday night, we went to Kingston Avenue. The Shluchim were gathering at Wingate. There's a little, I think it's a public school. And we were watching videos, unpublicized videos of the Rebbe.
By the way, has that video been ever...
Well, I have a copy in my desk.
Right, but has it ever been showed on like Gem or anything?
No, because it has it's personal stories of people.
Oh.
So I'm sitting there. I still remember I was sitting next to Rabbi Zippel from Salt Lake City, who was sort of the neighborhood mentor because he was in Utah from 1992. So he sort of came to de facto to titular head of Chabad in Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, and Utah. And he didn't know anything. So I'm just sitting next to him, and the screen comes on, and I see the wording on the screen. It says either adoption or infertility, something in one of those two. And there's 3 clips of 3 different women coming by the Rebbe asking for a blessing for children. 2 of them, the Rebbe tells them to adopt a child, either a Jewish child that was born Jewish or one that is not born Jewish that goes through a conversion.
Crazy.
I was just sitting there looking at the screen, like in this weird daze, like this can't be, like what's going on here?
Remember you called me.
And then the 3rd lady comes and the Rebbe gives her a blessing to have a child. So she says, but when? And the Rebbe said, "Sedarf toch nemen 9 chadashim. It has to take 9 months. What do you want to have the baby right here? I mean, give it a minute." But I stood up, I said to Benny, to Rabbi Zippel, I said, I got to step out for a minute. I didn't tell him why. And I walked onto Kingston Avenue and called you. And I said, Chav, I still remember pacing like a tiger outside. Like, I don't know how to explain this, but what just happened here is,
Yeah.
if there was ever divine intervention.
It really felt like a little hello from Hashem. Like, here we are trying to do this thing. We have no idea how to do it. We don't even know, should we even be doing this? And it was like a little message, like, it's still going to be a very long road and it's still going to be crazy, but it was almost like, but you're on the right path. Like, you're doing the right thing. That's kind of what it felt like.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it for what it was, and there's no way for it to mean anything else. It was a direct, at the right moment, at the right time, at the right situation, at the right junction in our life. Suddenly, there you got it. This is the path.
And it was very solidifying. Like, we didn't ever question that path.
Yeah, I mean, I actually called Rabbi Shmutkin and Jem, and I still remember, at first I wanted to get a copy of the video, but also, like, why infertility and adoption? Like, we just, every year we try to pick a random topic that videos that we can't put out to the public, but for a close-knit group of people, it was wild.
Yeah.
So
incredible.
The problem was that we got inspired, we got guided, and then we went right back to Montana.
Back to reality.
There was still nothing on the horizon.
Yeah.
And then that summer, I'm going 7 months later, you're still in school. There's no babies on the horizon. Then your sister has her baby and you're there to welcome him, Mendel. And we travel, at the time we were traveling for Simchas Torah. We stayed in Montana for the first days of Sukkot, for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and the first days of Sukkot. And then there wasn't enough going on yet in Bozeman.
Simchas Torah, side note, is the hardest yantif to do.
Message from Chavie Bruk on holidays.
Yes.
But
we can talk about it more later.
It's maybe for a different podcast.
Different podcast, correct.
But there'll be a podcast of Chavie Bruk's religious views that are more gray and her husband's black and white program. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Part
2028, we're going to do that one. So we went to San Antonio for Simchas Torah. We're flying home. We're in the Denver, godforsaken airport of Denver, Colorado.
Literally, I remember exactly where we were.
5-hour delay due to a snowstorm.
Gosh, those delays happened 20 years ago too. Nothing changed.
And I get a phone call. And the phone call is about a baby that was born, that will be traveling to America. And there's uncertainty about what the future for this baby is. The baby was born as a premie. You know the exact weights and dates, but...
Yeah, 9 weeks early, 3 pounds.
3 pounds in a dilapidated...
Less than 3 pounds.
In Moscow, Russia, and Russia in general, in the Eastern Europe.
Well, I think you can say that this phone call was from your friend.
Well, we're going to get there, but yes.
Okay, I'm giving it away. Shoot.
So, born in Eastern Europe, either you pay to go to a private hospital where you can get some level of Western care, or you're in a slum hospital that makes the worst hospitals in America look good. And this baby was spent over a month on ventilators and having surgeries and premie-related treatments for a month or more. And now we're getting a call that there's the potential that this baby will need a home. and we're sitting in the airport. I was sharing with you in real time what was going on, and we're just like, could it be? I mean, should we?
Well, remember how he started the phone call? How did he?
Are you still interested in
He's
adoption?
like, are you? Like, was that for real? Like, was that a real conversation that we had? And we're like,
Right.
yes, it was real.
Yeah, and so the problem with those kind of phone calls, and we've had many since, is that it gets you very excited
Till it actually happened.
until it was certified in court.
Torture.
Yeah. So
It's the worst.
turns out, and we only found out a lot of the details later, but the phone call came, of course, as Chavie mentioned, from the same Yossi who I had spoken to 8-9 months earlier at the Kinus HaShluchim, at the conference. The mother only found out she was pregnant at 5 months.
I think 7 months.
7?
Oh, she was born. Because she was born at 7
5 months. She
Yeah,
found
yeah.
out she was pregnant, and in Russia, I believe the law is that an abortion is not an option at that point anymore. And then she had birth to a premie, and they ended up having to travel to the United States for medical treatment to assess some of the condition that the baby was experiencing. The baby was named in Moscow at the shul by the chief rabbi of Russia, Rabbi Lazar, at the Marina Russia shul, and she was named Chaya Miriam. We didn't have a say in her name. Came a package deal. We got a baby with a name.
Mm-hmm.
And
Beautiful name, so it worked out.
We had a lot of hoops to go through because she was in America. She was adopted, as we're going to see in a moment. She was adopted by American parents, but not the normal international adoption route, which is
It
you
wasn't
go
an
to that
international
foreign country.
adoption,
It was
right.
a domestic adoption with an international baby who didn't have American
So
citizenship.
she fell through the cracks of immigration.
Yeah,
It was like no one knew what to do with her.
So I want to go back for a second. So we got the call right after Simchas Torah, and on November 9th, or November 10th,
10th.
the 23rd of Cheshvan of 2009. So in the world of adoption, it's unheard of. We're talking about 5 weeks later, something like that, 4 weeks later. We had already adopted her in New Jersey. And because of her status, and I'll go back
You weren't allowed to leave the country for 3 years.
Right, well, we couldn't get her social security number.
Right.
We couldn't file her as a tax on our taxes because she didn't have a social security number. And back then there was something called an adoption credit, which we couldn't file for because she was this, I guess, illegal baby living with us.
But she was legal.
She was legally ours, but not a legal American citizen. It was a weird,
Right.
at the time I reached out to our senator, at the time was Max Baucus, and I said, what am I supposed to do? And he said, he spoke to Janet Napolitano at the time, which is the what is it called? The Secretary of Homeland Security. And she said to the senator, if you want to help the rabbi in Montana, then you could pass the Baucus law or the Bruk law and make a new law, and then we could give her citizenship. So basically, he wasn't going to do that, which means the way it works is that you wait 2 years, and after 2 years, she becomes a citizen.
Or not a citizen.
A green card citizen,
Okay.
same thing at that age. But going back to the moments that we walked out of the adoption agency in Shrewsbury, New Jersey, driving on the Garden State Parkway, you were in the back seat with this new baby. We came obviously with a...
It's so surreal because like you go into the adoption agency, okay? They have your baby and then they hand you this baby and you're like, here's your baby.
Bye.
No. I can't explain. Like on the one hand, it was just so normal. Like it didn't feel weird. And on the other hand, like when you think about it, it's like, what's happening? Like I just handed a baby and it felt so normal that it was weird. It was weird that it felt so normal. And it was just like, okay. And then we just moved on and we had a baby.
Yeah. And I think we went to Morristown.
Well, no, first we stopped at your cousin, a Grossbaum.
Really?
Yes.
By Maishi and Zeesy in Paramus?
Yep. And I changed her diaper there and we had because we didn't know where we were going.
I totally don't remember that.
Do you remember now that I'm saying it?
No.
We stopped in Target parking lot, remember?
Target, I'm sure we stopped in. I just don't remember stopping at Maishi and Zeesy.
1,000%. I think they were the first people to see her.
I believe you. I just don't remember.
Well, we'll have to fact check after, but I'm pretty sure.
No, sounds right.
And then you're not allowed to leave the state of New Jersey. We have to talk about that.
Well, there's interstate laws, and so in order to make sure that society doesn't have human trafficking, there's very strict laws about transferring a baby
over
an
state
adopted
line
baby or from state to state until it's
all the paperwork goes through.
called interstate compact. So the state of Montana needs to approve that everything looks good, and then they can tell New Jersey that we have permission to come home. So we were. Did we stay? We stayed at the Walters.
No, we stayed at Chavie's.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we stayed at Chavie's house. Yes.
Well, you had two close friends, both
Yeah.
in Morristown at the time, right? The Sakovskis.
I remember because I was giving her a bath and she wouldn't unclench her hands. Her fists were so tight. Like I couldn't. She was like gripping for the light, which makes, once you understand attachment and trauma, like it makes a whole lot of sense. But I didn't know anything about that. So I was giving her a bath and I was trying to open up her palms to like wash her hands. And I remember I called Sarah Bronsky, who's a doctor friend in Bozeman. I'm like, I can't open her hands. Like, she's like, don't worry. She'll relax. It'll be fine. But I would, for a long time, I had to pry her hands open and clean inside her hands because she would just hold them so tight. That was in Chavie's house. I'm almost sure.
Yeah. So we stayed in New Jersey, and then we finally got permission, and we crossed the border into New York.
Yep.
Went to my parents' house.
And then Ellie was born, and we were there for Ellie's.
Upshernish, maybe?
No, Pidgin Haben.
Pidgin Haben. My nephew Ellie. It was also crazy because it was the weekend of the Chabad Conference of Rabbis.
That's right.
And I had two guests coming from Montana. I had Larry Greenbaum and Gavriel Snyder. They flew from Montana to come join me at the conference. Meanwhile, my father was the one shuffling them around most of the time. I did join them at the banquet. We had a new baby and everything went out the door. I could care less about the conference. We were busy. We were in a different world. And it's interesting how it elevated us immediately into a different realm.
Yeah.
So suddenly we went from this world of infertility, which we're still in, but the daily pain of it.
Yeah. And it's interesting because then it was like almost like infertility didn't exist.
Yeah.
Later, it comes back. But like for those first little while, it was just like, oh my gosh. It was like, what? What infertility?
And then we finally had permission. We flew back to Montana.
Mm-hmm.
And we had wonderful people in the community that set up our whole shul.
I look back at that because it's like we weren't even in Bozeman for that long. We were there for 2 years, 3 years?
No, we were there in 2009. No, 2 years.
2 years. And we already like had built such a beautiful relationships and community. And when we kind of shared the news that we adopted a baby, we came home and they had set up in the shul, like, I have pictures. I wish that there's some times where I wish that there was a video podcast because then I can like show pictures, but tables of like anything we would need, like diapers and wipes, pack and play,
clothing, car seat,
like everything was just like we walked in home and everything was just like sitting there waiting for us.
I still remember the big
incredible.
card. They had a big card for us.
Huge card.
With a picture of Chaya on it.
Yeah.
That they got in the email. And I remember, I'm gonna forget some of the names, but I still remember Amanda Crone and Barbara Rosenthal and Romy
Amram and
Neustadt,
Justine, Mick and
Justine,
Holly,
Katya,
Robin.
Yeah, and I don't know, it was Holly, probably Holly. But
like I said, Mick and Holly.
Oh yeah, Mick and Holly.
And Sarah Bronsky.
And Edith, maybe. It was just an incredible love. We were showered with so much love. And you know what? We can say it. Getting showered with love feels really nice.
Oh, it was amazing. It was such like balm for the soul. It was, I can always tap back into that feeling and be like, wow, we felt loved. We felt supported. We felt like it was a community simcha. And it was just really.
And that is a blessing that I think we celebrate till today is that, when you're in a position of leadership, when you're running a community, and since then we've expanded to 5 other couples in 4 other cities, you look at the friendships that were built, the close friendships, and they still exist till today. And they're still created till today. And there's nothing like having incredible friends.
But I think it also comes from willing to be open and sharing your struggle. Like it wasn't a secret and we were letting people in. And when you let people in, they can show up for you. Right. If you don't let them in and you decide you're dealing with everything yourself and you're in your little insular world, then people don't get to show up for you.
Right.
because you're not letting them in. And I think that's a huge thing that I love to talk about because, yes, so much of this is private and painful and boundaries and all those things, but there are ways that you can let people in. And the only thing that happens from that is if you let in the right people. You have to be smart about if it's a toxic person, then don't let them in.
In general, keep toxic people out of your life.
Yeah, I mean, to like be smart about who you let in, but the only thing that happens from that is then they get to support you and they want to support you, and then you get to feel loved and supported. But that only happens if you let it happen.
Listen, we came home from New York in like late November, early December, whatever it was, and then in late January we did an adoption party.
Yeah, but I know it was January. I don't know. Yeah, because I thought Chaya was like 6 months old when we did the adoption party.
No, she was like
No?
3 months old. Maybe it was February. It wasn't much longer. And I know because some of the people that came went skiing then, so I knew it was ski season. The Luxons, for example, had a lot of skiing involved. And even that, the community came out to that party in spades.
I still have, there's very few things that I like keep sentimentally. I have Chaya's outfit that she wore to the adoption party, which your mother picked. So it's a very special outfit. And I have that still hanging in the closet. That's like such a special thing.
I think that was the first time we hired Leslie Lucas for an event.
Yep.
And
now she's doing our son's bar mitzvah.
And we had sushi. I still remember.
Yep.
And it was friends flew in, family flew in, and then the local community came out.
Yeah.
The Reform rabbi was there. I mean, everyone showed up for that celebration. Whoever was in town showed up at that celebration. And again, it felt like we were being enveloped with so much care and love. And then about 5 minutes later, we got a call about the next adoption.
So when did we actually get that call? It was like 6 months in?
No. Right then, in February, you flew to New York for the women's conference.
Oh, we have to talk about the women's conference.
Right, that's what I'm saying. You went to New York.
Yeah. Okay.
Right then, right around the time that we had our big celebration was the annual Chabad Women's Conference. You flew to New York. Tell us more.
So yeah, I got a call, I forget from who, about speaking Thursday
Wasn't your Aunt
night.
Rifki from Florida?
Mm-mm.
Rifki Kahanov, no?
I don't know. I don't remember. But would you want to speak Thursday night, which is historically known to be like the opening dinner? Everybody goes to the Thursday night program and talk about a challenge you had or a life, a thing. And at first I was like, what are they talking about? Like on shlichus? Like, and then it dawned on me, I'm like, oh, I could speak about infertility. And I don't even know, honestly, like it's very murky. Like, I don't even know if that's what they meant or if that's what they were asking. Cause I feel like they were pretty shocked when I got up there and did what I did. But anyways, I decided that I was going to take that opportunity to speak openly about infertility. And Chaya was then she was couple months old. And I remember like after the speech, she was with me at the kinus and she was coming with me wherever I went. And she was like literally a celebrity. Like I would walk into a room and it would be like, Chaya.
But also when you were done your speech, they zoomed in on her and her picture showed up on the screen.
Yeah.
You got a standing ovation. She was barely 4 months old.
So that speech was, I think, pretty historical. Because I was open about our infertility journey. And it was, nowadays it's more common, but even so, with 2,000 people in the room, just laying it out there, like matter-of-factly, and then ending off, not with like a biological miracle story, but with an adoption. I think I still get people telling me about that. And this is 16 years ago.
And I was sitting in Bozeman and I watched part of it live because the system that they had in New York was not so hot. And I was beaming. But what was amazing was hours after I started getting emails from shluchim that their wives told them that your wife spoke. And I mean, the most congratulatory and warm and
that's, again, it's called letting people in, right? It's sharing your story so then people can show up. Because what happens if I would be walking around with Chaya, I wasn't pregnant, all of a sudden I have a baby, people are starting to be like, what happened? And they don't want to ask. So then there's all these,
awkward.
there's awkward moments or there's everyone's trying to figure it out and then they're trying to figure it out. And to me, I was like, that's not what I want. That's not what I want. I want it to be something that's like, I'm proud of, right? Not a secret, something that's like to be celebrated. And I think we take a lot of credit for approaching it in that way.
Also, I think a lot of times people complain that they don't get the support they need, but they have this expectation that people are supposed to know what's going on prophetically. If you're not going to tell them, how are they supposed to support you? They don't even know what's going on. So I think we have always, and I think we've even gotten better about it, but we've always felt like it's going to take a village. This journey is not a simple, but in order to engage the village needs to know what's going on. So again, with the boundaries and with, respecting our children's privacy on certain parts of their story, but you went and spoke. It created a ruckus. It was the headline on every Chabad website. Shlucha announces adoption, whatever the announcement was. And about 2 weeks later, I'm sitting in my office, which at the time was in our house, and my friend Moshe Shapiro, he wasn't my friend then, now he's my friend. He was just another rabbi from Hoboken, New Jersey, called me, and he started one of these typical calls, which you've gotten many such calls since. I have a situation in my community, and now I already know if someone says the situation, I know what's coming. But back then I didn't. He's like, basically, there's a relative of a member of his shul who is going to have a baby and is seeking a home for this baby for a variety of reasons. The mother and father were not in a position to take care of this baby. And, we did it once and we jumped on it immediately.
Because obviously, like, it's my dream to have a big family. So it felt like so crazy. Like, I have a baby and yet here I am, like, having the opportunity to have another baby. But it was also not smooth sailing. It was a lot of... It
was a lot, and there was...
First of all, you have to understand the financial burden that it is you have to have a family lawyer. The birth family has a family lawyer, and guess who pays for both of those lawyers? So, and they can pick any lawyer that they want. So they can have a lawyer that's top lawyer that's $500 an hour, and guess who's paying for it?
Well, guess that's what we had in that.
And that's what we had in that case, and it was
very stressful. You pay for the medical bills. You pay for the medical bills.
You pay for all the medical bills, and then at the end of the day, it's not a guarantee. You pay for the lawyer, you pay for the medical bills, you pay for living expenses, and at the end of the day, if that mom changes her mind, tough noogies. You don't get any money back, and she has all the rights. You pay for everything, and she has all the rights, as it should be. I don't think, I'm not saying that it should be different, but it is the reality of process of adoption. And till you have that baby in your hands with the paper signed, it's one level. And then you have to wait, how long? 6 months?
Every state is different.
Every state is different. So New Jersey is the best.
30 days.
So, and then you have to go through an official, what do they call it? The things at court. Adoption. Finalization. So that you just have to block out. You literally have to compartmentalize that, like, for 6 months, you have this baby that's not necessarily finalized and things can go wrong. But like, it's just a crazy concept if you think about it on all fronts, because again, it's like this birth mother, it's her baby. So if she decides that she's changing her mind, that is fair and square. And it doesn't take away the fact that you are on the other side of that. And it's extremely grueling, and the roller coaster of emotions that you have to go through and the fear that you have to just put aside. And it is insane. But then Zeesy was born in the most insane situation.
Right. So
Take it away.
We got a call late February, early March. Due date was early October, maybe mid-October. So we were planning to go to San Antonio for Simchas Torah and then head back to Bozeman, and then we would travel to New York to New Jersey for the adoption.
You go a couple days before due date, you know?
And on the first, it was a 3-day yontif, so it was Shmini Atzeres was on Thursday, Simchas Torah was on Friday, and straight into Shabbos Bereishis. And on Thursday morning at around 11 a.m., we had a plan set up with the lawyer and with the agency that if something comes up during the holiday, They can send us a fax.
Right. And if something comes up, had nothing, like it was 3 weeks early. It wasn't.
It was a contingency plan.
It really wasn't on our radar. Like, and they were like, she's not, like, don't worry, like you're good to go, whatever. But then she was born 3 weeks early on the first day
of a 3-day
yontif, which we can't communicate.
Well,
we get a fax. We found a way to communicate, and we get a fax. You still have the fax, right?
I do.
It's in our safe. Baby girl
says the weight
5. She was under 6 pounds because she was early, and something like you need to come get her. Or
the second fax had the warning. The first fax was just the information. So we sent the fax back through a Gentile that was hanging out near your father's shul. He sent the fax back saying, we're working on figuring out the details. Then I had that Gentile call the nurse that was...
Your mother was very sick.
My mother had a nurse and
she had a full-time aide. And Yechanan was there too.
This was September, and this was September 30th, and my mother died in December. So it was the end of her life. So the aide was communicating, and basically
we had the aide communicating with our person in San Antonio. It was insane. But they basically were saying, like, if you're not here
by Saturday night,
this baby is going into social services.
Correct.
Like, there's nothing to talk about.
So we communicated with New York, and we notified them that on Saturday night, about an hour and a half after the Sabbath ends, that's the way we wrote it to them, that my relatives will be there to pick up the baby.
But how did they let that happen? It was legal. Like they were like representatives of the family.
Yeah.
And whatever.
Because the lawyers were involved. So we had representatives and so my brother Yankee, who was a newlywed at the time, I believe, and my sister Mushki, who was single, traveled to, it was not exactly across the border in New Jersey. It was a pretty far out there in western New Jersey. And they picked her up at the hospital.
It's just like the craziest thing that they got to see Zeesy before us. And I remember Mushki always said, she's like, it was the weirdest thing. They sent us a picture.
Of our baby.
It was, the things that like happened to us is just like, it's so crazy.
And the minute Shabbos was over in Texas,
we booked a flight Sunday
they already
morning.
had the baby.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was an hour, they were an hour ahead. And we went online, and there was only one flight direct that next morning, Sunday morning, from San Antonio to Newark.
It was my father's 50th birthday that we missed, obviously. But that's also another reason why we were there.
Yeah. And Chaya, and we flew together with baby Chaya.
Chaya was 13 months old.
Yeah.
But we only had adopted her 11 months prior.
We landed in Newark, and we went up to Enterprise Rent-A-Car to get our minivan. And it was in that parking lot at Enterprise.
They're standing there with the car seat, and there's she's like, here's your baby.
Mushki and Yankee present us with our baby. And
so crazy.
As we like to say, most parents can't say they met their kid for the first time at Newark Airport. It's certainly not at Enterprise Rent-A-Car at Newark Airport. And that time we went to stay at a hotel in Teaneck, so we were next to the kosher restaurants.
Right, and we had 2 babies. And I remember that first night.
First of all, she looked like a little chicken.
Well, she was tiny.
Yeah, I couldn't handle it. I said, I'm scared if I touch her hand's going to come off.
Chaya was 13 months. Chaya had maybe she had an ear infection or fever or something. And then I sent you in the middle of the night to the pharmacy.
1 a.m. I was trying to track down a pharmacy.
We were up with 2 babies. It was, and then once again, we were stuck in New Jersey.
And she, we got to name her.
Yes.
It was the first time we got to name a baby. So we named her for my bubby's mother. So my bubby was still alive, my bubba Esther Goldman. And I had a very close relationship with her. And my mother was still alive. My mother didn't pass till another 2 months. I couldn't name her for my mother yet, although that would have been.
Yeah, we had to wait a long time for that.
Yeah. And so I said, what would be a beautiful thing for my bubby would be to give a name for her mother, Zisha. And we call her Zeesy. And that did mean the world to her. And then we went to New York, which was when we got the permission, and it was not a fun reality. My mother was in the process of dying, and we had these 2 new babies. And eventually we headed back to Montana. Then we came back because my mother died, and now we're at a Shiva house with 2 babies.
Zeesy's 2 months old, and Chaya's 15 months.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
Your sisters were really, they were both
My
learning in
sisters
Bishrif,
were
and they were very
amazing.
helpful.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I could not have done it without them. They were helped me a ton. I think it was Chana Laya.
Yeah. Chana Laya,
Um,
yeah.
Okay. And then obviously Zeesy went through her journey, which we've talked about before, but it's not in the scope of this podcast because we're really focusing on.
Well, the shorter part of it is that about 1 year old, we realized something was off with her. She was having seizures. And through a very long process, which we've spoken about, and I'm sure we'll speak about in the future, she was diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder that she still deals with till this very moment. And it's a complicated reality. It's another aspect of this never-ending journey. But that it's not uniquely connected to infertility and adoption, except for the fact that when a child's adopted, you don't know what their genetics are, so you only find out later that you're dealing with
Yeah. I mean,
certain
surprises
genes.
always can happen, but
Right. But we had no heads up.
We
had
have
no reason to, right.
just in general, medical information, you get whatever you get from birth mom, which is a very surface level situation. I can just speak for our kid. Very rarely do you have any birth father information. So you really just don't know.
Right.
And what's interesting is with Zeesy, because we had the resources, I mean, we had to fly, we were determined to figure it out. And we got, I mean, a lot of doctors were just like dismissive of our situation in the beginning, but it took us many, many years. And we actually helped her birth mother figure out what she struggled with. And they obviously she struggled and had
But they didn't know what it was.
Severe symptoms, but didn't know what it was. And now she's able to get the help.
They actually read an article online about Zeesy,
Yeah.
and they reached out and said, we think we figured something out here.
I mean, she's a lot older, so it's the damage is kind of done, but that's very fascinating.
But also, I think your point is that whether it's adoptive or biological, if you need answers in the world of medicine, you're going to have to be an advocate for your child, and it's not necessarily going to be the local hospital, the local doctor. When your intuition tells you something's going on,
kind of like the same thing that happened with us in the infertility, right? Like people are dismissive. They're like, "Oh no, it's fine.
Yeah.
Seizures, development, not related, whatever." Like, and you just have to keep going if you believe that something needs to be figured out.
And then, I mean, after Zeesy, not too long after, maybe 5 months after, we got a call about a potential.
No, because Zeesy and Menny are 2.5 years apart.
I'm not talking about Menny yet.
Oh.
About 5 months after Zeesy, we got a call about a brother and a sister that needed adoption.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
And I said,
and I
hell
wanted
no.
them so badly. This is where it's very good to have somebody who has a brain.
I was like, are you nuts? You think I'm going to have 4 kids under the age of...
A brother and a sister.
And I said no. And I said there's other couples that need it.
We ended up facilitating a lot of adoptions in our
Yes, we've
career.
gotten many calls, and over the years we facilitated quite a few. In this particular case, we helped another couple who had no kids at the time adopt them. And I have no regrets.
I don't have any regrets either. Because every kid's meant to be with that
I understand,
family,
but I have no regrets putting my foot down and saying this is insanity. It's one thing to have 2 kids.
Down, and I don't like it. Why do we have to do things that make sense or with reason? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. The Lubavitch is Chabad. It's supposed to be intellectual. Wisdom, understanding knowledge, not emotional fruitcakes.
But we go above and beyond. Like you're just supposed to do it.
Well, we could have this fight later. So we got that call and many other after. And definitely at that point, 5 months after having 2 babies, ages...
Yeah, didn't really make sense.
And then, but the problem was that when we were finally ready to think about another one, it was not such a simple matter because adoption doesn't work. There's no rhyme or reason. It comes or doesn't come, and nothing was coming. And then in September of 2012, I was in Montreal for my nephew's upshernish, who had just turned 3. And I got a call.
This is the nephew that was born
right before
Chaya.
We adopted Chaya, correct. So Chaya was 3.
Mm-hmm.
And Zeesy was
2.
And I got a call from a pretty prominent Chabad activist who says, straight up, are you and your wife still interested in adopting babies? And I said, yes. So then he says to me, even if the child might be black, he did not use the word biracial. He said, black. I said, I stuttered. I didn't know the answer. And that's, I knew the answer to adoption was yes, but it's a much more loaded question. There are ramifications both in the Jewish world, but also in general, raising a child with a white family with a non-white child.
And I think we understand that more now than we did then. Then it was like, of course, like it was almost like, what does it matter? Skin doesn't matter.
You were definitely of course.
Yes, I had zero hesitation whatsoever.
I grew up in Brooklyn and my experience was different.
100%.
And I knew about some of the feelings and
realities on the ground.
Less I say racism or subtle racism.
I grew up in Texas. I lived in Montana. I was very naive. Like I was just like, whatever, who cares?
But I did call the rabbi back and say that we decided that we are interested. And that was in September. And it was early on. So
yeah, it was like she was only like 2 months pregnant at that point.
Yeah.
2 or 3
and then
months.
Eventually we're talking about now fast forward. We almost thought we were going to have to fly for Pesach because they thought maybe she was going into labor. She didn't, so we made plans to leave the morning after Pesach.
And then waited a week.
Still 10 days till we had the baby. But and we sort of crisscrossed the East Coast from Washington, D.C. to New York, to Jersey, to whatever, because he was born outside of Baltimore in Maryland. And then on a Sunday evening on the 5th of Iyar of 2013, so we're talking about 2013 now, our only boy, was born.
We were there because we were in the hospital.
We were in the waiting room in the birthing department. And because of the interstate compact, I'm going to get back to where you spent the time in the hospital, but we couldn't get back to Montana in time for the bris. And so Rabbi and Mrs. Levi Druk at Chabad of downtown Baltimore were so gracious that they opened their Chabad house, their home, for us to host the bris. And we got a caterer and our family, whoever was able to come, friends and family.
It was a beautiful bris.
Yeah,
it was really special.
They flew to Maryland, right? You have a couple from Montana and people are flying to Baltimore to go to a bris.
Yeah,
of course, crazy. About a half an hour after the bris, we got the permission that we can go back to Montana. So, God forbid it come 2 days early, but it came when it came. It was meant to be. Actually, I went back with Menny a few last summer because he wanted to see all the places where he was, and I took him to the place where he had his bris. And the hospital was clueless, and so even though
they weren't clueless.
They didn't care.
So they had no protocol or setup for an adoptive parent. So like, okay, baby's born. Now the baby is going to an adoptive mother. The birth mother has a room, right? Because she just gave birth. The adoptive mother now has a newborn baby. Where is she going? In most normal hospitals, the adoptive mother would also have a room.
Right.
They didn't give me a room.
You literally sat in the hallway.
I sat in the waiting room.
All day. All night.
They wheeled the baby to me in a bassinet and was okay with me sitting with my baby on a chair, taking care of my baby in a waiting room for 2 days.
And I was hanging out with the other two kids.
And you had Chaya and Zeesy taking care of, so you would pop in and out.
Very, very little, but...
And it was a very traumatic experience because I think, I don't know if I can, it was like a very liberal run hospital, and they had the social workers that I think I found out later that she was new and wasn't really trained, but the social worker was trying to convince the birth mother to keep the baby.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do anything about it. So she would come and take the baby from me and bring the baby back to the birth mother, who is already in trauma, already just had a baby, hormones are flying. She knows she can't do this, but we're both being tortured for 2 days. So every few hours, she'd be like, I'm just going to bring the baby back to the birth mother. And I was like, at the end of the day, I'm like, I don't even know if I'm walking home with this baby.
Right.
Like, and you weren't around because you were taking care of the little kids. I was by myself trying to navigate this situation. And I just was like, the only thing I could navigate was just like breathing through it and staying calm and not trying to freak out. But it was just like I had no control. It was probably the most traumatic experience ever.
Right. And I remember going for breakfast one morning. You were busy at the hospital. I took the girls for breakfast to Goldberg's
And you brought me, I remember you brought me food. It was so good.
But I was at Goldberg's.
Before I was diagnosed with celiac and I wasn't gluten-free, I had such good food.
So I was sitting and having breakfast, and one of the employees there comes over and says, "Oh, nice to meet you. Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Montana. What brings you to town?" I said, "I'm adopting a baby." He says, "Oh, why did you and your wife decide to adopt?" I met the guy 4 seconds ago. So being the Bruk that I am, I said, when we got married, we decided that we don't want my wife's body to be messed up from pregnancies. So we went down the adoption route. I thought the guy was going to go into cardiac arrest.
You told me this story. I'm like,
I never corrected him.
Yeah,
Let him think that. You have no business mixing into some random guys. What do you mean you're asking me? I know you from somewhere. What are you asking me about why I chose to adopt? But anyhow, I had fun with it. But we stayed in Baltimore for about 2 weeks. We stayed at the Residence Inn, and then eventually flew back to Montana. And
I remember flying home with like
3 babies,
3 little kids,
toddler babies.
And
I think we have a picture of it. We have a picture of it.
We have a picture of it. It was like, what's happening? It was amazing.
And then we had
And remember when we flew to Rickle, and then Rickle got married 5 weeks later.
Oh my gosh.
And then remember that was the whole leaving the car on the curb.
Yeah, but that's beyond today's scope. But yes, it was a lot. There was a lot to have 3 little kids at home, although he was delicious and cute and his little black squiggles.
Yeah, but he didn't sleep, remember?
No, you remember. I slept fine.
No, you slept just fine. Menny Bruk did not sleep until this day. He does not sleep. So,
by the way, that was another
changed.
beautiful part. We got to name we have a child named for the Rebbe, and a shluchim of the Rebbe. That was a very beautiful thing. And then we had about 3 years of no adoptions. And we had calls, and we had a terrible episode in between.
We had a traumatic story.
That's the FBI was actually involved after the fact. We didn't know, but another rabbi reached out to us about a potential adoption. It turns out, and again, I'm not gonna give the whole length of it. We were expecting a baby. We were already invested and expecting a baby,
and invested a ton of money.
Well, because we were doing what you do normally,
and it was a scam.
And for the medical, we invested money in the doctors and in the rental house near the hospital. And bottom line is, we got a call that our baby was killed in a car crash, and the poor rabbi that was the one that reached out to us felt terrible to share that news, and we were heartbroken. Right, we thought we were going to have a baby the next month, and so your sister Chana Laya came, and we went to California for 2 days just to breathe.
Process.
And then it turns out we found out the FBI was involved, that this so-called mother
Scammer.
who claimed she was pregnant had done this many, many times before and scammed many, many parents and others. Basically, she was a long-term scam artist, and it is what it is.
But it felt so violent. It felt like we were like, you feel like an idiot.
I don't know what felt worse. The fact that the baby
the
died
fact
in
that
a
we
car
didn't
crash,
have a baby, or the fact that we were just totally scammed.
Right.
And you feel dumb. You feel like, how did this happen?
So that was in 2015, 2 years after Menny. And then in 2016, I got a call from a Chabad rabbi in California, and they said that they have a woman in their community who has a granddaughter living in Cody, Wyoming, and maybe we have a summer camp they can join. And at the time,
she just needed somewhere to go for the summer. She's very connected to
Judaism,
to God and Judaism and Torah, and wants to be her home situation is not great.
And we didn't have an overnight camp, obviously, but we had a little day camp for 2 weeks.
And also, she was too big for the day camp. So we're like, okay, well, we wanted to help. So we're like, okay, we'll make junior counselor type style thing, right?
She was just turned 12 at the time.
Yeah.
She came as a junior counselor. She stayed in our house. She was only supposed to come for 1 week. And then she asked her grandmother if she can ask us if she can stay for another week. And clearly, she told us later that it was a sense of stability and normalcy, and she just felt like there was something good going on there. And then she told her grandmother she doesn't want to leave at all. And we're like, okay, camp is over. We're about to have a road trip to Minnesota. You have to go home.
Yeah. And I remember we went shopping, I got her all the things she needed for school, and she was like, whatever, it wasn't supposed to be full time. It was temporary, but I wanted to leave her supported and take care. And then a week later.
Well, we were in Minnesota, and we got a call that she's asking if she can come permanently.
No, it wasn't.
No?
I don't know if it was like that. It was more like it's really not a good situation at
Oh.
home. And the grandmother was asking, like, what could you do? Like, how could you help her? Like, I'm like, what should I do? Like, how could I help her? Like from Bozen. And I said, like, kind of jokingly, I was like, the only way I can help her is if like I raise her. Otherwise, how am I helping her? Like I can call her, but like that's not being practical. And she's like, well, actually, I think she was waiting for that, like it's actually, well, would you?
And we ended up having I don't know, a couple days of discussions.
Yeah.
And we concluded that God put this 12-year-old on our front porch.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, logically, it makes no sense. There's a Chabad house in Jackson Hole. There's a lot of other things that could have played out. And the turn of events and who called me and who got in touch with me and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It was clear that for only godly reasons, she ended up on our front porch and in our home. And so we said, yeah, we'll take her in. I still remember, I think we were in a hotel in North Dakota or South Dakota. And we made the decision. Our mutual friend, Rabbi Shlomo, a dear friend, was very involved. And we came home from our trip to Minnesota. We went to a lawyer's office, and her biological dad brought her and signed paperwork in the lawyer's office, handing over custody to us. And for the first year, it was a guardianship.
Yeah.
Which is its own legal term. And then eventually it switched to an adoption. The following summer, we had an adoption finalization, celebration. And the rest is history. That was Shoshana. She came to us as Courtney. And she wanted to, we allowed her to choose her. She stayed Courtney for a while.
Didn't change till adoption.
Right. And then she had to pick a Jewish name. And she liked Shoshana Yael because Shoshana was a rose, like a rose plucked from amongst the thorns. And sticking to true Shoshana mentality, Yael in the book of Judges.
She loved that story. She's like,
she was a wild warrior who knocked out a evil guy with a nail in his head, and that's who I wanted.
Ooh, I like that. I like that person.
So we adopted her at 12, which was very different. Chaya was suddenly not the oldest anymore. She was the first, but not the oldest, and it had its own layers of complication, which you spoke to her about on the podcast you had with her. And in many articles.
Yeah. And for people who are listening, who don't know, I do have a podcast with Shoshana talking about her specific journey in our family. So that's always something that you can refer back to if you want more details on that.
And she's 21 years old now as we record this. She thinks she's independent.
She's graduating from MSU in May.
Yeah, she's playing independent.
Incredible. She is independent.
I understand that, and you can't have it both ways. In America, they tell me that their frontal cortex or whatever is not, till you're 27, it's not really fully functional, but then they give them driver's license and let them drink alcohol. It doesn't make any sense. But anyhow, I'm done my rant. Let's go back to... So she lives in Bozeman, and we see her all the time, and she's journeying through life, and we've had her now for almost 10 years, right?
In the summer will be 10 years.
10 years. And it was 5 months. It was April. So, no, it was 7 months after we took Shoshana in, when she was still Courtney, that I was sitting outside the post office in Bozeman on Babcock, and I get a call from a member of Bozeman's Reformed Jewish community.
Yeah, this is the craziest.
Yeah, whose name I had known. I mean, I was delivering matzah to her, but I didn't know her personally. And she's like, Chaim, I'm wondering, I know you and Chavie adopted a bunch of kids. I'm wondering if you know anyone that'd be open to adopting a kid, a baby. I'm like, yeah, we would. Not knowing what the real question was. And she goes, I was hoping you'd say that. I'm like, why? What's up? So she tells me the story of how there's a relative of hers that is pregnant, and there's going to be a need for a home for this child, for this baby. And this was April time, about Pesach time, Passover time. And indeed, in August, on a Friday morning,
Livingston Hospital, which was such a huge
Difference from
contrast to my experience in Baltimore. And obviously Shoshana was 12, so I didn't have another hospital experience after that. And actually, those are my only two hospitals because Chaya I wasn't there and Zeesy I wasn't there. So it was incredible. First of all, she was born C-section, so I knew what time to be there. I had a room. So there was only the two of us. Like the birth mom had a room and I had a room. It was like a hotel. It was spacious and big. I had to be there over Shabbos myself because obviously Chaim was going to be home with the kids. And can I tell you, like the opposite experience? You weren't there. So, but it was like, in a way, it was like very healing. It wasn't healing of Menny's experience, but it was healing for me to have like another experience. And we actually, first of all, we were left alone. Like there was no one doing anything for us, but Chana Laya's birth mom and parents were there the whole weekend. And we ended up spending a lot of time together. And it was a very beautiful, like having so many people who really love this baby and are doing so much for this baby kind of be together. And we spent a lot of time together. And also like the birth mom, she held the baby, but I was there. Like I was part of the process of like the transition. And I always say like it was the healthiest experience of all the kids, you know, and it was really a beautiful kind of existential, like you can't really explain and describe how it was, but it was really special.
Yeah, and I was home with 4 kids,
Mm-hmm.
and our friend Matis was visiting that Shabbos. So on Sunday morning when it was time to, first of all, Shabbos and Shul, I had the great honor of naming her for my mother. So we finally had our baby that I could name for my mother. So we're talking about 8 years
later.
8 years after my mother
We
was
were the
gone.
last one, but everyone in the family
All
had.
my 4 siblings had a Chana Laya, and we didn't. And so that was a very special thing. And then Sunday morning, Matis drove one car, I drove another car, and they wheeled you out with you, the nurses, and it was just like you said, it was a very different experience. It was such personal, and we came home, and that's it. We lived happily ever after. We have 5 kids.
Happily ever after. No hiccups from there.
No hiccups. There's never hiccups. It's all just hunky dory, seamless.
I have to say, Chana Laya also has a very unique experience where she has contact with her birth mother and birth grandparents because her birth mother does not live locally, but visits, and her birth grandparents do live locally. And over the years, they're extremely respectful and amazing. And over the years, like very eased in very slowly, but have been able to have a relationship with Chana Laya and in turn the rest of our family, obviously. It's hard for the other kids because it's very triggering, right? Like they don't have the same story, and we constantly have to talk about everyone's unique story and everyone's unique challenge and all the things that we have to face and be uncomfortable with. And it's really, really hard. We don't sugarcoat it at all, but there's a lot of feelings around Chana Laya's particular situation. But we're at the point now where they have a beautiful relationship, and it's actually pretty incredible because I'll get like a message or a text like, hey, do you need a break? Can I pick up Chana Laya for the afternoon? And I'm like, oh, Hashem, thank you.
She's also our only kid born in Montana.
Exactly. She's a real Montanan.
She always says, I was born in Montana. I was born in Livingston, and that's why I'm never cold.
I'm never cold.
I have Montana blood and Montana blood. So for what it's worth, I mean, the journey, it's almost hard to believe. You know, some days it's hard to believe that it's been 20 years, and some days like we managed to pack all this in 20 years. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And that's not even like each child individually in their own story.
Right. Like our goal was to really kind of share their journey through our infertility and adoption process and journey. But also like each individual child has such complex and beautiful and tricky life stories, but that's kind of not what we're here to talk about. But in the end, it is quite something to reflect back. And I think also we've learned so much along the way. I think I think it's kind of like how it is for parents in general. Like when you have a baby, you're so naive, you're young, you have no idea what it actually means to be a mother. But this is even more extreme because know about attachment. You don't know about what it really means to raise a child that you didn't birth.
And we still learn new things every day.
And we're still learning. And also, like, even if you, let's say somebody decides to adopt and they decide they're going to be the most educated person who's going to go into it eyes wide open. I can't even tell you how many stories like I know where people really weren't like naive, and still the process, and you just can't prepare yourself for how it actually plays out. And it really is incredible. And I feel like one of the things that is important to talk about, and again, I think a lot of parents can relate to that on a it's obviously, but differently, but the work and the people you have to become to weather the storm and weather the experiences and to be capable of the journey. At the end of the day, you become somebody that you never would have been able to be before.
Someone
but
you don't
feel
even
like
recognize.
Right. And someone that you could really be proud of, because you have to be so sensitive. You have to be so empathetic. You have to be so evolved. You have to be so like thinking out of the box. You have to put so much of your own emotions and your own feelings and your own sensitivities, and you have to not ignore them, but it's actually harder than ignoring them is facing them. Is literally reconciling the everyday, the things that come up.
I think parenting in general in today's day and age, in an age of social media, in an age of changing hormones, in an age of people are maturing so much younger, or at least they're developing so much younger,
Totally.
is already hard enough, even if they're not adopted, and even if they don't have special needs, and even if they're not struggling with wounds and trauma and
or being a different race. Like the ramifications, like, of course I would never make a different decision, but it is completely and wholly a bigger deal than I thought it would be.
Right.
Not for me.
And I think
for
that's
him.
In general.
It's not even for us. It's not a big deal for us. It's a big deal for him. It's such a big thing.
A lot of what we've discovered is that the things we didn't know that turn out to be a much bigger deal. And you do have to deal with the results and the ramifications of that.
Yeah.
But there is no question in my mind, and I've said this, I think, on the previous podcast that we did together, is that some of my friends who meet me and they remember the old version of me, and they're like, something's not right. Where's the tough, crazy, bully, whatever, outspoken? And I'm like, well, God finds interesting ways to refine your character. Yeah. And we have 5 entities that do that all day. They spend the time refining us and forcing us to dig deeper into ourselves, to see what our real values are, to see what our real character can be, and to make real changes in our life so that we don't end up saying or doing the wrong thing to such vulnerable creations that God put into our life.
Yeah, and I think it's important to say, just because I don't like to leave room for interpretation of certain things that I want to make clear. On the one hand, it's like, of course, I don't have to say it, but I do think it's important to say is that having the privilege of Hashem deciding that we were worthy of raising adopted children, that's how I think of it. It's like, you were worthy. Like, this is a gift.
It's a tough job, and you were chosen.
It's a difficult thing, and you were chosen to do it. I take it very seriously, and I look at it as a privilege. I look at my children as a gift, as miracles, right? We talked about having miracle stories. These 5 children are our miracles. Like, they are the miracles, and they are something that I wouldn't change or trade in for the world. And I think it's important to say, I've come across in my 20 years of being in this world, is people like to say things like, oh, a family's a family. It doesn't matter how you have a family, and adopted children, biological children, it's the same. And that's where it's like, when I describe the challenges, it's not to say that I wish it didn't happen, or I don't value my family, or I have any regrets. It's just It's called facing reality. And I've learned that through many years in therapy, which my therapist helped me so much. Face reality, which then allows you to embrace it in its truth. Because when you want to deny something or you want to make something that it's not, and you want to decide that like, oh, it's the same. And then all of a sudden you're stuffing all these feelings and then you have shame about different feelings that come up. It's about facing the reality and understanding that no, raising a family of 5 adopted children is not the same as raising a family of biological children. I'm not here to tell you what's better, what's worse, that's not the point. The point is that it's not the same. One doesn't substitute the other. So when my husband and I are open about our journey, it's not out of woe is to us or this is so difficult or whatever. It's about facing the challenges in your reality and understanding and realizing the gift that it is and the privilege that you have to be the ones to get to do this. But it only comes with really facing like what it is and not sugarcoating or pretending or making it less comfortable or uncomfortable for the people around you.
Amen.
Do you have anything to add to that?
No, you said it all. That was a great ending to a fun episode. And, don't call me if you have questions about adoption. There's no point because your story is not my story. I can tell you what my story is. You just heard it. But I can tell you everything about my kids and it could be nothing as it relates to the kids you may adopt. So
we're good for some basic information.
Yeah, and adoption is a nice idea and it's a nice concept, but every just like every child is different, every adoption is different. And if you really want to know what it's like, you got to adopt a kid and find out for yourself.
And
or not.
And really want to though. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, but stay tuned. Next year we'll come back.
Ooh.
Well, we're going to do it every year around our anniversary.
Okay.
So next
like
year we'll come back for part 3 and you never know what we're going to talk about. So stay tuned.
Sayonara.
Thanks. Bye. Okay, so I am so curious to know how you feel about this episode, and I hope that you share that with me. It's really, really interesting to reflect on sharing such a personal story with my husband. I think a lot of people get used to when someone is a sharer and they share a lot of their life and their thoughts and their process, that you kind of just expect it and think that it's maybe a no big deal. But I'm here to say that I am a sharer and I love to share. And I think like my soul was created in a way that needs to share. And at the same time, it definitely is still a big deal, especially when you're sharing something so personal and so nuanced and especially sharing it with your spouse. And we all have our own feelings and experiences. So it is a little scary to put it out there. I do remember, it wasn't that long ago, but I do remember feeling after the episode really good. Like sometimes I get really exhausted after interviewing. It's my favorite thing to do and I love it, but takes a lot out of you, right? And because I was interviewing with my husband, I didn't feel drained. It felt really good. And we both felt very good about how we shared. And I'm just here to say that I so appreciate all of you guys who have always accepted and taken my story and how I feel with such grace and have been such amazing supporters. And I think that's what allows me to feel safe to share, because I know that the people who are listening, I mean, the majority of people who are listening, or at least the majority of people that I hear from, maybe there's a lot of people who feel differently and I just don't know, but the majority of people that I hear from really have shown such beautiful support, and that makes a difference. So this was a really, really big deal. It was really, again, like I mentioned in the intro, it's the first time we've done something like this in such a comprehensive way together and really go through the story from the beginning till present day. And it was it was a big deal. So I really hope that it meant something to you and you took something out of it, or it provided comfort and solace, because we're all on a journey. It might be a different journey, and it might be different challenges, and you might feel differently about the challenges that we go through. But if you're on this earth, you're on a journey, and chances are your journey involves some pain, some fear, some challenges, some form of opposition, some form of confrontation. So I hope that this provides a little bit of comfort, knowing that we're all in it. We're all in it together. And without further ado, I would like to introduce the hot take voice note section of this podcast, because it's actually not even on purpose, but it fits very well with the theme. And the hot take is falling in love overrated? Now, first, I want to remind you what this process looks like. Every week, I put out a hot take or a question for you to answer. I put it on Instagram, and then I share with you my WhatsApp number where you can send me your thoughts on voice note. So always look out for that. It's really fun. The engagement has been really growing. It's been turning into something that is so enjoyable for me and allows you, the listeners, to be part of this podcast in a real way. That's the point of it. I am a lot of times like talking to you, and you hear me in your kitchen and in your living room, and you're a listener and a receiver. But this is more than that. We are slowly building this wonderful community, camaraderie, where we can share and engage. And I can hear, it's not only that I want you to hear my thoughts, I want to hear your thoughts too. And I think that's really fun. So that's the voice note section in short. The hot take of this week is falling in love overrated? Now, this question was purposely ambiguous. It could mean a lot of different things to different people. And that's kind of the point. It's like, when you hear this, what does it mean to you? What reactions does it elicit? And do you feel strongly? Like, does the word falling in love connote like a secular type of experience, and it has nothing to do with how we live our life? Or is falling in love a universal thing that we all should experience? Like, I want to hear from you, and it's not super, super clear on purpose, because it's going to mean something different to everybody. So we are going to play the first voice note.
When my husband told his father he was in love, he said, "You're not in love, you're in lust." And I think in our world where we are not intimate, we don't touch generally the opposite sex, it's a good idea for our kids to be in lust. I have asked each of my kids in one way or another if they wanted to touch, kiss, be with the person they're getting engaged to. And I would not feel comfortable letting my child get engaged if they couldn't tell me that even if they're blushing, if they couldn't tell me that, yes, they could imagine being intimate, kissing, touching the person they're about to get engaged to. And they should want that.
Okay, so I love this. And I think it's really fun to hear somebody say it like that in like plain terms. I don't remember talking about that with my mother, and I cannot imagine how that conversation would go, and it would never be initiated by her. Not that that's good or bad, it just is. We are always so focused on common values and shared direction and wanting the same things and practicing our faith in a similar way. So there's less conflict. Those things are important, but we're almost set up for success in that way. Like, just the shidduch dating situation kind of sets people up with similar values. Doesn't mean your personalities are going to match, but that is almost like a given, I would say. But what about the lust and the love and the passionate feelings? I think what she's saying is that, and I agree, that we need to focus on that too. It is really important to love and be very intimately attracted to your spouse. And maybe that's not talked enough about, and maybe we experience that later and we talk about it more once we're years into marriage. But I wonder what it would look like if we talked about that more in the dating process, and what that would look like when you're really actually focused on that love. So I love that hot take.
Hi, Chavie. I thought I would share just off the top of my head that with the topic of do you believe in the concept of falling in love, Rabbi Manis Friedman talks about this a lot. And, the word falling is really an inappropriate word with regards to love, because falling has very negative implications. You can fall down, fall off a cliff, fall off the wagon, etc. And if you say that you can fall in love, well, that implies that you can fall out of love, which that's just narishkeit. Our relationships with our spouse, with our parents, with our children, with our friends are experienced at best only through a Hasidic, a godly, not a secular framework.
Okay, so I love this hot take because it's the exact, it kind of feels like the exact opposite of what we just heard before. And this is also bringing up a very visceral reaction of like, no, falling in love is a secular concept, or it's a secular idea, or the fact that just the way it's phrased, like falling in love is secular, and we are, nothing really matters outside of like Hasidus and God and that experience, and everything that we should be experiences is through that lens. So it's very interesting because I think the issue that this person has here is just the phrasing of the word falling in love. Because to me, there's no contradictory concept that is, like, there's nothing contradictory in Hasidus that says we shouldn't be in love. It's just this phrase brings out a very secular vibe, and it's triggering. But according to Hasidus, like, we're supposed to be in love, I'm pretty sure. So I feel when I listen to this message is that it's not that falling in love is overrated, and it's not that falling in love isn't important. It's just the way that it's phrased, or the image, or the feeling that it brings out or connotes feels very secular, and that feels contradictory to Hasidus. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of what is coming up for me when I hear this voice note. And it's really fun to hear what this word brings up for people. Like, that's the fun.
Absolutely not. The feeling of falling in love with your spouse is a high that carries you through the harder seasons in marriage. And the fact that you get to recreate that feeling over and over again is a testament to how, as a couple, we can reinvent ourselves in the many years that we're together. There are a lot of couples who fail in this recreating process, and those couples tend to break up every 2 years when the feeling wears off and they go about finding a new partner to experience that high again. So no, falling in love is not underrated. It's an amazing tool to gauge where you guys are at in the recurring cycle of reconnection and reinvention as you fall in love with each other over and over again, and also while experiencing the deep love that makes you choose each other every day. It's not the same, but falling in love and having deep love are both two very important ingredients in the recipe for a healthy marriage. That's my hot take.
Okay, I really love this because it introduces like a little bit of a different perspective. And I agree, like, falling in love and a deep love that you build over time are two different things, and also equally important. I do think that falling in love connotes this like very lusty, fast, like you fall fast, and it's big and passionate, and it can fizzle out very fast. And I think what she's saying is that kind of emotion and feeling is very important, and we have to make sure that in our relationships, in our marriage, that we remember when those feelings fizzle out to pay attention and to rebuild that, and to keep finding new ways to fall in love with your spouse. Because honestly, like, marriage is work, and marriage can get boring, and marriage can get stagnant. And maybe you have like this foundational deep love that keeps you together, and you're on the same page, and you've gone through challenges together, and you're so deeply connected. That's like the deep love. But the falling in love can ebb and flow. And I think it's a really great perspective to remind ourselves that, yes, we constantly have to fall in love with our spouse. Every couple years, the spark might die down a little. You get in rhythm, or the day in and the day out isn't so romantic and exciting. But to be cognizant that you need to fall in love with your spouse and keep recreating that love, and having that passionate love and having that deep love are not the same, but both equally important. I can get behind that. I will like to think of how to do that in my life. It's just a great concept to keep in the back of your mind, and very valuable. And it's interesting because this hot take is coming after the podcast that I recorded with my husband. And as I'm asking this question to all of you, I'm asking the question to myself, and I'm like, like, what does that mean for me? So do I think falling in love is overrated? Absolutely not. But do I think that I was like completely smitten head over heels for my husband before I was married? I don't think so. Like, I don't think I knew what that was. Like, I don't think I could go back and say, oh my God, I was so in love. I mean, we dated for 3 weeks. We got married 2 months later. Like, the system and the way that it was set up is not always conducive for that. I know that it happens for people in that way. So yeah, it's confusing to me. Like, I don't know if I look back, like 20 years ago, had I fallen in love with my husband before I married him? Possibly not. Am I completely in love now? 1000%. And we have done a lot of work to do that, have gone through a lot of really big life things together. Yeah, as you know, if you listen to this episode, and I think it just is that way for us now. And I think for many people, maybe that's their story, that they weren't necessarily head over heels in love before, but are now. But I also think that part of people's story might be that they never have that feeling of a head over heels type of love, where you have that like butterflies in your stomach and that, the physical sensations. Like, I think it doesn't happen for some people, even in many years of marriage. So it definitely had me thinking, and I don't have like a clear, definitive answer. All I know is that I definitely don't think it's underrated. However you want to phrase it, to me, it doesn't feel underrated at all. It feels like a really, really important thing. But if I reflect back on my own experience, I don't think I had fallen in love before marriage. I think that happened for me later. Anyway, I hope that wasn't an overshare. But that was super fun. Thanks for joining. And I want to take a minute and make a special mention for the people that send in the voice notes. I am so grateful. It really means so much to me and allows me to really engage with you guys in such a new and fresh way. So it doesn't matter whether you want to share anonymously or you want to share with your name. Both are welcome, and it really is the best. So keep that in mind next time you see my hot take. If you're on the fence about sending a voice note, just know that it means a lot to me and it's so much fun, and you should just do it. Okay, so this podcast does not happen by itself. The magic takes a whole group of amazing people, and I want to tell you who those people are. So obviously I'm your host, Chavie. Our producer and creative director is Eli Ben-Chion. He keeps me on my toes. He makes sure that I just keep growing and am on point and don't miss a beat. He's the best. Audio is edited and mixed by Reed Seeley. Also, unbelievable. He's so cool, calm, and collected. You kind of need that working with me. And the music, which is beautiful, is by Basia Schechter and Shaul Magid. And this is totally unexpected.